Chapter 1665 Songlan College, Special Enrollment Dormitory. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were sitting in Bailey Hongzhuang's dormitory. As for Di Beichun's room, it was now occupied by He Mu and the three beasties. Bai Shi and the others are now following He Mu. Just now, they urged He Mu to go out and buy food. Bailey Hongzhuang's smile revealed a bit of helplessness. With He Mu by the three beasties' side, she was a lot more relaxed, but He Mu was going to be tired. He Mu has money on him, don't worry. Di Beichun was full of smiles. He recently found that bringing He Mu along was really beneficial. Originally, the three beasties had been following Hongzhuang around like third wheels. Now that He Mu brought the three guys out, wouldn't he have time to be alone with Hongzhuang? Thinking of this, Di Beichun only felt that he appreciated He Mu more and more. As a shadow guard, it was really not easy to share his worries all the time. Di Beichun secretly decided that when he returned, he must reward He Mu well. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichun's smile and couldn't help but narrow her eyes. "Why are you so happy?" Di Beichun's expression quickly returned to normal. "Nothing. I'm just happy for Bai Shi and the others." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichun suspiciously. She didn't think that Di Beichun was telling the truth. "Wife, I haven't seen you for so long. I just want to be alone with you for a while." Di Beichun looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a gentle gaze, his beautiful face full of affection. Since Hongzhuang returned, his tense heart had been relieved. But until now, they had almost never had a good conversation. It was rare that there was nothing going on today, so they could spend some time alone. A ripple appeared in Bailey Hongzhuang's clear eyes. She stared at Di Beichun's bright and dazzling eyes, and the corners of her lips curled into a lotus-like smile. "Wife, Master has agreed to our marriage," Di Beichun said with a smile. As soon as he said this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but have a look of surprise in her eyes. She immediately moved closer to Di Beichun. Really? Did the sect master really agree? She had always been worried that there would be many obstacles between her and Beichun, because the difference in status between the two was not small. This could be deduced from the attitude of the elders back then. Fortunately, the sect master didn't show any dissatisfaction with her from the beginning. Now that she heard Di Beichun say this, she naturally felt a burst of joy. When he saw the excitement in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes, Di Beichun's gaze gradually softened. An indescribable happiness and satisfaction filled his heart. Based on Hongzhuang's reaction, he could see Hongzhuang's feelings for him. It was a good thing that he had appeared early enough and captured Hongzhuang's heart. "Wife, you're so happy." Di Beichun grinned at Bailey Hongzhuang like a fox, filled with craftiness and evil charm. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but restrain her expression, and then turned around and asked, "Are you happy?" When he saw Bailey Hongzhuang turn around, Di Beichun couldn't help but step forward and wrap his arms around Bailey Hongzhuang's slender waist. He rested his chin on Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder and said, "I'm happy. How can I not be happy? Being able to marry you is the happiest thing in my life." Di Beichun. Chapter 1666 Di Beichun needs Bailey Hongzhuang's soft hands, his voice low and charming. "Although we got married in Feng Bo country, my identity is Feng Bo country's prince, not my real identity. This time, I will marry you as Tiangang sect's young sect leader and announce it to the world. Only in this way, Bailey Hongzhuang is Di Beichun's real wife." Bailey Hongzhuang leans in Di Beichun's arms. Her delicate and beautiful face ripples with a smile. She is really touched that Di Beichun treats her so sincerely. "To me, it doesn't matter whether the world knows or not, as long as you have me in your heart." Bailey Hongzhuang's voice is gentle and beautiful, slowly narrating her inner thoughts. Di Beichun hugs Bailey Hongzhuang. "You will always be in my heart, but I want everyone to know that you are my most cherished woman." Hongzhuang is his beloved woman. He doesn't want Hongzhuang to suffer any grievances. He only wants to give all the best things to Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart trembles slightly. Her heart is so hot. Listening to Di Beichun's words, she only feels that all her sufferings are nothing. Even if she transmigrated and became a waste of a young lady, step by step, she has to go through hardships to get to where she is now. But as long as Di Beichun is by her side, she feels that everything is worth it. Perhaps this is fate. Otherwise, why did she transmigrate into Bailey Hongzhuang's body and meet Di Beichun? It is all destined. Beichun, it's so good to have you by my side. If it weren't for Beichun by her side, she doesn't know when she would know that the parents of this body are still suffering. Although she is the Bailey Hongzhuang from 1,000 years ago, after fusing with the memories of this life, she is no longer the Bailey Hongzhuang from 1,000 years ago, but the combination of the two Bailey Hongzhuang from 1,000 years ago and 1,000 years later. Although she didn't experience everything that this body has experienced before, all the memories are incomparably deep, as if she has experienced it herself. She can feel it. So now, she is the combination of these two lives. The parents of this body are her parents. If Di Beichun hadn't been by her side and discovered all of this early, she didn't know when she would have known all of this. Once she finds out that her parents are no longer alive, she will regret it for the rest of her life. She has always been grateful to Di Beichun. She is grateful to him for appearing in her life, for always being by her side, for protecting her in all ways. She loves Di Beichun even more. No matter if he is handsome, domineering, affectionate, or decadent, she loves him. From the moment Di Beichun walked into her heart, he has taken root in her heart, grew up, and occupied her whole heart. The two of them hugged each other quietly. Even when they hear each other's breathing, they feel that it is the most beautiful thing. Wife, I have something to tell you. Di Beichun looks lovingly at Bailey Hongzhuang, who is snuggling in his arms. At this moment, Hongzhuang has lost her usual strength and is more like a little bird. It seems that he can only see her like this when he is by Hongzhuang's side. She is especially cute and pitiful. Bailey Hongzhuang nods slightly. She squints her eyes lazily, relaxed and at ease. What is it? Chapter 1667. Di Beichun stared at Bailey Hongzhuang. He also didn't want to ruin the atmosphere. However, this matter was really important. Before returning to Tiangang's sect, he had to tell Hongzhuang first so that she could be mentally prepared. Wife, I'm afraid this matter will exceed your expectations, Di Beichun said slowly. In fact, when he first heard his master talk about his past, his heart was filled with surprise. However, as they talked more and more, everything seemed to be connected as if it was a nail on a board. Now, both he and his master felt that Hongzhuang was his master's granddaughter. However, the real confirmation still needed to be completed by Hongzhuang. Hearing Di Beichun's words, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but frown. She looked at Di Beichun with a worried expression. Did something happen to my parents? Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's nervous state, Di Beichun hurriedly caressed Bailey Hongzhuang and said, Wife, don't think too much. It's not about that. Bailey Hongzhuang let out a sigh of relief. The nervousness in her phoenix eyes also dissipated a little. She asked, Then what is it? Bailey Hongzhuang sat up straight. Just from Di Beichun's tone of voice, she could tell that this matter wasn't simple. If it wasn't so, Di Beichun wouldn't have asked her to mentally prepare herself first. I think that my master might be your grandfather. Di Beichun pursed his thin lips. His dazzling starry eyes stared at Bailey Hongzhuang, looking straight into her heart. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but be stunned when she heard this. Her bright eyes were filled with astonishment and disbelief. Her expression was filled with confusion and suspicion. Beichun, you're saying that the sect leader might be my grandfather? How is that possible? Didn't you say that my mother was an outstanding disciple of the Sun Moon Palace? And you didn't even know about my grandparents' existence? There were many cultivators in the Shengxian continent. As a cultivator, they would often walk in dangerous situations, and the chances of losing their lives were extremely high. It was precisely because of this that many children were orphans. This situation was not strange. According to the information Di Beichun had gathered, Bailey Hongzhuang thought that Mu Lingbing had been adopted by the Sun Moon Palace and that her parents were no longer around. However, how could he suddenly get involved with the Tiangang sect's sect master now? With the sect master's wisdom, How could he not know about his own child? Seeing the puzzled look on Bailey Hongzhuang's face, Di Beichen couldn't help but explain, "The reason for this is a little complicated. Master didn't think of this possibility before. He only guessed it later." Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen silently, waiting for Di Beichen's explanation. Whether it was Di Beichen or the sect leader, they weren't people who would speak without thinking. Since they had said so, they believed that they had enough reasons to convince others. "This matter started from when my master was young." Di Beichen hugged Bailey Hongzhuang and slowly told her about his master's past. Bailey Hongzhuang listened carefully to Di Beichen's words. However, the more she listened, the more shocked she became. She never thought that the sect leader would have such a past when he was young. This kind of emotional twists and turns were truly vexing. However, towards Mu Jin's, Bailey Hongzhuang admired her very much, but also felt sad for her. Chapter 1668. "So, sect master is certain of all this because of my mother's name?" Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly. Even if Mu Jin's had mentioned this name, it seemed that all of this could not be confirmed. After all, just a name could be a coincidence. Di Beichen shook his head slightly. Not only that, back then, the person who destroyed the relationship between master and master's wife was Yu Siqing of the Yu clan. And when Yu Manlan attacked you, it was with Yu Siqing's help. The rainbow divine pearl in your body was taken out by Yu Siqing, and your parents were humiliated by the Yu clan when they begged the Yu clan to save you. All of this seems to be too much of a coincidence, and Yu Siqing hates you too much. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes gradually sharpened. From Di Beichen's words, she was keenly aware of the problem. According to a woman's intuition, she increasingly felt that this possibility was very high. "Are you sure that Yu Siqing was the one who did all this?" Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flickered, and a cold light flashed in the depths of her eyes. Di Beichen nodded. "Yes, Master has already confirmed this matter. It was Yu Siqing. Not only that, Master also asked Yu Siqing if she knew your identity, but Yu Siqing never answered. But it's this kind of cover-up that makes it even more suspicious, so I think that after we return to Tiangang sect in a few days, you and Master will do a blood test, okay?" Di Beichen held Bailey Hongzhuang's small hand. In this way, this identity could be completely confirmed. Whether it was or not, everyone could be at ease. Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment and nodded. "Okay." Sect Master had been feeling guilty for so many years because of what happened back then, and until now, she had been searching for Mu Jin's whereabouts. Even if it was to reassure Sect Master, she was willing to test it. If not, Sect Master could also be at ease. If this was the case, then this Yu Siqing was too hateful. Back then, she had ruined the relationship between the Sect Master and Mu Jin Se. Later on, she had even harmed her mother and herself. This woman's thoughts were simply too vicious. However, based on the way Yu Siqing had destroyed the relationship between the Sect Master and Mu Jin Se, it was clear that she was not a kind person. In order to obtain the person she liked, she didn't use any perverted methods. She didn't even care about her good friends. She did her best to destroy everything, destroying the Sect Master and Mu Jin Se's lifetime happiness. If the Sect Master was really her grandfather, then where was her grandmother? Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but think, but she didn't say it out loud. After all, nothing had been confirmed yet, and it was still too early to say anything. If this was just their wrong guess, then it would be ridiculous to think too much about it now. However, Bailey Hongzhuang had already engraved Yu Siqing's name in her mind. It was because of Yu Siqing that she had fallen to such a state, and her parents had suffered so much. Originally, she should have enjoyed a great reputation in the Shengxian continent at such a young age. Her status would be high, her parents would be well, and she would be living the life of a pearl. However, because of Yu Siqing, she had been forced to separate from her parents. She had suffered so much at such a young age, and had lived under the ridicule and sarcasm of the masses for so many years. All of this was because of Yu Siqing. As long as Yu Siqing was still alive, she would kill her with her own hands. Chapter 1669. Di Beichen noticed the change in Bailey Hongzhuang's expression and immediately pulled Bailey Hongzhuang into his embrace, his heart aching. His embrace was warm and tight, filled with a comforting feeling. My wife, I will definitely make you Seeching pay the price. Di Beichen's handsome face turned cold, his hawk-like eyes filled with coldness and killing intent. That intense hatred and killing intent was enough to shock anyone. Ever since he knew that everything that Hong Zhuang had suffered was because of Yu Seeching, Di Beichen's hatred for Yu Seeching had reached the peak. He had never hated someone so much before. When he thought of how Yu Seeching's selfishness had caused his wife to suffer for so many years, he secretly made up his mind to let Yu Seeching have a taste of pain. Such a vicious and despicable woman should have been punished long ago. Bailey Hongzhuang leaned her head on Di Beichen's shoulder and nodded. She will regret everything she did. Her ink-black, jade-like indifference was filled with a chilly light. She would definitely make Yu Seeching suffer 1,000 times more pain. For her, for her parents, for the sect leader, and Mu Jin's. At this point, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but raise her head to look at Di Beichen. Beichen, have you found my parents in these 2 years? Although she knew that the possibility wasn't high, Bailey Hongzhuang still wanted to know the progress. After all, only after knowing the progress would she know what to do. Di Beichen shook his head slightly. I haven't found them yet, but I've confirmed that they are in the Yu clan. It's just that their location is too hidden, so it's hard to find out. After hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's reply, Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't surprised, but she still frowned. If they couldn't find her parents' location, then how could they rescue them? Could they just attack the Yu clan directly? Once the Yu clan knew that they had gone there for Lan Yinxiao and Mu Lingbing, they would definitely move the two of them away, or even kill them. Therefore, they couldn't act blindly without thinking. Only after rescuing her parents would they be able to act without any scruples. If we can't find them, what should we do? Bailey Hongzhuang stared at Di Beichen. This situation was really too troublesome. I believe that someone will be able to find them. Di Beichen said in a deep voice. Who? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes gradually brightened. As long as there was a chance, they couldn't give up. Slaughter Heaven Pavilion. Heaven Beichen said. As long as you paid the price, no matter what information you wanted, Slaughter Tower would be able to give you an accurate answer. As long as the price was the price. The answer. The Slaughter Heaven. It SSSS. After hearing Di Beichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's pretty face showed a touch of surprise. Slaughter Heaven Pavilion? Di Beichen nodded slightly and continued. That's right. I've already contacted Slaughter Heaven Pavilion. However, because the young master of Slaughter Heaven Pavilion wasn't there, they couldn't confirm whether to accept this mission or not. Now that the young master of Slaughter Heaven Pavilion has returned, I believe that there will be an answer soon. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression changed slightly. From Di Beichen's words, she knew that Di Beichen already knew about Mo Yunjue's identity. Chapter 1670. You recognized Mo Yunjue. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. What she said was an affirmative sentence, not a question. Di Beichen nodded. It was hard to forget someone as impressive as Mo Yunjue after seeing him once. What's more, the expressions of Xia Jiqing and the others were clearly reminding him. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but explain Mo Yunjue, and she didn't want Di Beichen to misunderstand. She and Mo Yunjue were just friends, nothing else. She didn't want Di Beichen to have any grudges because of such things. She only hoped to maintain enough trust with Di Beichen and not have any doubts. However, without waiting for Bailey Hongzhuang to finish speaking, Di Beichen had already hugged Bailey Hongzhuang directly. Bailey Hongzhuang's back was slightly stiff, and Di Beichen's voice sounded in her ears. During the days when I wasn't with you, Mo Yunjue was able to protect you. I'm very grateful to him. For me, the most important thing is you. You can return me safely. This is the happiest thing for me. Di Beichen's handsome face was filled with a smile. I understand your thoughts. He never doubted Hongzhuang's sincerity to him. Not to mention that he was full of confidence in himself. Thinking back to the time when he wanted to pursue Hongzhuang, he spent a lot of effort. When he saw Mo Yunjue's appearance, he knew that he was not very good with words. He believed that Mo Yunjue would not be his opponent. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't know the thoughts in Di Beichen's mind. She only felt extremely moved, and her hands wrapped around Di Beichen's broad back. She was very happy that Beichen trusted her so much. Just like how she trusted Beichen, there was no need for her to say anything. The other party would understand. Beichen, I also have something to tell you, Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Now that they were talking about these things, she also had something very important to tell Di Beichen. Wife, please speak. Your husband is listening. Di Beichen raised his long eyebrows and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a faint smile. His voice was even more gentle and pleasant. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and continued. I obtained the final inheritance in the small world's ancient ruins. Di Beichen nodded slightly. He had also heard about this. After all, relics in small worlds had always been extraordinary existences and were extremely eye-catching. Every time an ancient ruin appeared, it would become the focus of everyone's attention. My wife is really amazing. You make your husband very proud. His bright eyes were filled with admiration and admiration. Today, Hongzhuang's potential was becoming more and more shocking. Her performance was also becoming more and more outstanding. He firmly believed that Hongzhuang was that pearl. Even if she had been covered in dust all these years, sooner or later, she would bloom again. From the moment Hongzhuang spoke in the Lan family, it already meant that she was extraordinary. Looking at Di Beichen's admiration, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up slightly and said, the owner of that ancient ruin is the palace master of Limitless Palace. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen's expression changed a little. He looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in astonishment. Palace master of Limitless Palace, Yu Linfeng? That's right. He's my master. You actually obtained the inheritance of Palace Master Yu. Di Beichen was astonished. This news sounded unbelievable. Chapter 1671. With a playful smile on her beautiful face, Bailey Hongzhuang thought about what had happened and felt that it was very interesting. At that time, ancient ruins had always been built by experts who had already fallen. There had never been any cultivators who were still alive who built them. Therefore, when she met Yu Linfeng, she felt that it was too inconceivable. Thinking back carefully, Yu Linfeng's way of doing things was very normal. The reason why experts would build ancient ruins was to find a suitable successor, so as to prevent their inheritance from disappearing from this world. Rather than waiting until they were about to fall to find an inheritor, it was better to find one while they were still alive. In this way, the inheritance would be more secure. When the assessment competition ended, Limitless Palace's elder, Gu Taihong, recruited you. Because of this, Di Beichen immediately thought of what had happened at the end of the assessment competition. At that time, when Gu Taihong was recruiting Hongzhuang, he felt that it was very strange. Logically speaking, under such circumstances, anyone would know that Hongzhuang would not join other sects, let alone the always smart and slick Gu Taihong. He had always felt that there was a problem, but he had never thought of the answer. Now that he heard Hongzhuang say this, he immediately understood. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Yes, Elder Gu told me to make a trip to Limitless Palace. I plan to go to Limitless Palace after returning from Azure Water School. Will you accompany me? Since my wife has ordered, your husband will naturally accompany you. Di Beichen's reply was very natural. He and Hongzhuang had been separated for such a long time. Now that they were finally together, he was not willing to be separated from Hongzhuang again. Bailey Hongzhuang was full of smiles. Her delicate face was now even more beautiful. That's great. My wife, what inheritance did you obtain from Palace Master Yu? Even Di Beichen was surprised when he found out that Bailey Hongzhuang had obtained Yu Linfeng's inheritance. Everyone knew that Yu Linfeng was a genius. Back then, he had used his own strength to sweep away many outstanding cultivators, shocking the entire Shengxian continent. No one knew where Yu Linfeng came from, but when he appeared, he was already in extraordinary existence. Under the leadership of Yu Linfeng, Limitless Palace became more and more powerful. In just a short period of time, it had become one of the most famous 10 great sects. However, Yulin Feng was usually quite mysterious, and it was very difficult to see him in person. Moreover, there had never been any news of him accepting a disciple. He never thought that Yulin Feng would actually build a relic in the small world. Once this news got out, it would definitely cause a lot of people to be surprised. This was because Yulin Feng was the most famous existence in the Shangxian continent. His every move was closely watched. Moreover, Yulin Feng had a few trump cards that were very powerful. If his wife could obtain the inheritance of this martial technique, he believed that her strength would be much stronger. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's next words shocked Di Beichen. Master said that he wants to give limitless palace to me. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly said. When these words came out, Di Beichen could not help but be stunned for a moment. He looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in astonishment and disbelief. What did you say? Chapter 1672. Master said that he wants to hand over limitless palace to me. Bailey Hongzhuang repeated. She understood Di Beichen's surprise. In fact, when she heard her master's words for the first time, she also felt that she had heard wrongly. For a long time, other than the experts who had already fallen, when ordinary experts were looking for an inheritor, especially the inheritor of a sect, they would need to consider it very strictly. Many experts would train their inheritors from a young age, who could be like her master and directly choose an inheritor from the ruins. That's what Master said in the ruins. However, I think I still need to make a trip to Limitless Palace to know the details. After all, it's not that easy to choose an inheritor. Bailey Hongzhuang pondered and said, although her master seemed to be very optimistic about her, as if everything had already been decided, she would not completely accept this matter before it was truly confirmed. In this world, many unexpected things would often happen. Even if the result had already been decided, there might still be unforeseen events later on. Moreover, her master was looking for the inheritor of Limitless Palace. This definitely required more tests. Therefore, even if her master changed his decision, she would not have any dissatisfaction. This was because her master had already helped her enough so far. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen nodded slightly. That perfect face of his was still filled with amazement. My wife is really not simple. After participating in the assessment competition, she became the inheritor of Limitless Palace. If this news were to spread, I'm afraid everyone would be dumbfounded. Di Beichen's face was filled with a smile. He discovered that Hongzhuang was really a strange woman. There were many ruins in Shangxian continent, and there were also many ruins in small worlds. However, to be able to enter the ruins and be chosen as the inheritor of a sect by the owner of the ruins, other than his wife, he was afraid that no one else could be like her. As the young sect master of Tiangang sect, he was very clear that as the inheritor of a sect, one would need to go through all sorts of tests to establish one's identity and consolidate one's position. Thinking back to when his master brought him back to the sect and began to train him from a young age, there were also many voices of dissent in the sect. It was precisely because of this that his master's requirements for him were exceptionally strict, and he was exceptionally hard-working in his cultivation. Even so, after his master left, because of the problem with his legs, the hall master and elders still took this opportunity to let him leave Tiangang sect. This was the first time he had heard of Yulin Feng directly choosing Hongzhuang as his successor. Just as Hongzhuang had said, nothing was certain at the moment. However, from Yu Linfeng's words, one could tell how satisfied he was with Hongzhuang. It was not that there were no female sect leaders in the sect, but the number of female sect leaders was much less than that of male sect leaders. Although both men and women were cultivators in the Shangxian continent, most of the time, men had the advantage. It was more difficult for a woman to become a sect master than a man. Even so, Yu Linfeng still made such a decision. This was enough to show how much Yu Linfeng valued Hongzhuang. What's more, according to his understanding, although Limitless Palace Master Yu Linfeng's character was slightly strange, he was also a man of his words. Since Yu Linfeng had said such words, there shouldn't be any problems. Chapter 1673. Luck is a part of one's strength. Di Beichen's voice was natural and firm. As a cultivator walking in the Shangxian continent, luck was a very important part. Luck was an indescribable thing, But every cultivator who became a powerhouse must have a certain amount of luck. Therefore, everyone believed that luck was also a part of one's strength. Hong Zhuang was able to obtain Yu Linfeng's affirmation. On one hand, it was because of luck that she encountered the ruins. However, at that time, how many cultivators entered the ruins? They also had the same luck. However, in the end, only Hong Zhuang obtained the inheritance. This was because of her hard work and potential to reach this step. Bailey Hong Zhuang understood that perhaps part of the reason why her master decided to give her limitless palace was because of the unfair treatment she received from the Lan family. Her master was also from the Lan family, but it must be because the Lan family did something unacceptable that made her master hate them to the extreme. If not, her master would not even want the Rainbow God Pearl. After thinking about it, Bailey Hong Zhuang still did not tell Di Beichen about this, because this was her master's matter. If she guessed correctly, even in the entire Shangxian continent, not many people would know about this matter. Since her master did not want to have anything to do with the Lan family, she naturally would not tell him about this matter. After all, this was not an extremely important matter in itself. In 2 days, we will set off for Limitless Palace, Di Beichen said slowly. Their purpose of coming to the Azure Water School had been completed. There was not much meaning in continuing to stay. Gong Shaoqing and the others were also preparing to return to their homes. After staying in the exam for 2 years, the place they wanted to go the most was home. Bailey Hong Zhuang nodded slightly. Okay. She also wanted to go to Limitless Palace to take a look. Moreover, her master had helped her a lot in the ruins. She must pay a visit to her master. All right, Beichen, I have the Rainbow God Pearl. Bailey Hong Zhuang smiled sweetly as she looked at Di Beichen. This was one of her great gains from the assessment. Ever since she had fused with the Rainbow Divine Pearl, her strength had increased a lot. Even her dantian had become larger and more comfortable. It felt as if something was missing from her dantian. Although it didn't affect anything, she still felt a little empty. Ever since she fused with the Rainbow Divine Pearl, she realized that this was how it should be. As Bailey Hong Zhuang's voice fell, Di Beichen's eyes were once again filled with a hint of surprise. Rainbow Divine Pearl? He knew that the Rainbow Sacred Pearl in Hong Zhuang's body had been transferred into Lan Qingyin's body. It was precisely because of the Rainbow Sacred Pearl that no cultivator of the same level was a match for Lan Qingyin. The reason why Lan Qingyin could become so famous in the Shangxian continent all these years was largely because of the Rainbow Pearl. At the same time, the 7-color Divine Pearl was a unique inheritance of the Lan family. Everyone was filled with envy and admiration towards the Lan family. However, how did Hong Zhuang have the Rainbow Sacred Pearl in her body? According to his understanding of the Lan family's inheritance, only one person in a generation would have the Rainbow Sacred Pearl in their body. Moreover, many times it would not appear for several generations. Master gave me a Rainbow Sacred Pearl, and now I've already fused with it. Bailey Hong Zhuang smiled. It was rare to see Di Beichen so surprised. Chapter 1674. Palace Master Yu has the Rainbow Sacred Pearl? Even Di Beichen, after hearing this news at this moment, showed a shocked expression. As everyone knew, only the Lan family had the Rainbow Sacred Pearl. Ordinary people couldn't even see it, let alone have the Rainbow Sacred Pearl. Moreover, Palace Master Yu gave such a treasure like the Rainbow Sacred Pearl to Hong Zhuang, which was enough to prove that Palace Master Yu was good to Hong Zhuang. Bailey Hong Zhuang nodded slightly. Yes, I was also surprised at the time. Her deep eyes revealed a clear light of thinking, as if she could see through people's hearts at a glance. Di Beichen was keenly aware that Hong Zhuang still had something to tell him, but with his understanding of Hong Zhuang, since Hong Zhuang didn't say it, it meant that this matter couldn't be said. Otherwise, with Hong Zhuang's trust in him, Hong Zhuang would definitely say it. This matter should be Palace Master Yu's privacy, and he didn't have the intention to pry. Have you integrated the Rainbow Sacred Pearl into your dantian? Di Beichen couldn't help but hold Bailey Hong Zhuang's hand, and his flawless face was filled with worry. With Hong Zhuang's current situation, it was extremely dangerous to integrate the rainbow sacred pearl into her body. With a little carelessness, Hong Zhuang may die. Although he had heard a lot of dangerous things that Hong Zhuang had encountered in the small world from Xia Jiqing and others, he had never heard of such a thing. Compared to the matter of fusing with the rainbow divine pearl, the other risks were not even considered risks. He never knew that Hong Zhuang had done such a dangerous thing in the assessment competition. Bailey Hong Zhuang nodded. Yes, it has been integrated. Such a dangerous thing. What if something goes wrong? Di Beichen frowned. Even if he didn't know enough about the process, just by listening he knew how risky it was. Looking at Di Beichen's nervous look, Bailey Hong Zhuang smiled slightly. Don't worry, aren't I in front of you now? Seeing Bailey Hong Zhuang's cute and well-behaved appearance, Di Beichen was also helpless. Hong Zhuang was his weakness, and he couldn't blame her at all. Suddenly, Di Beichen couldn't help but think of his inexplicable heartache and nervousness in Tiangang's sect before, and couldn't help but ask, Wife, when did you integrate the rainbow sacred pearl? More than half a year ago. Bailey Hong Zhuang thought for a moment before answering. After she came out of the ruins, the rest of the journey was very easy. Speaking of which, the inheritance in the ruins, ancient ruins. Hearing this, Di Beichen couldn't help but think of the heartache he felt at that time. Before, he didn't understand why he was so heartbroken that he couldn't breathe. In the narration of Xia Jiqing and others, they never mentioned anything about it. After listening to Hong Zhuang's explanation, he finally understood what was going on. Just from his painful situation at that time, he could know how much pain Hong Zhuang had suffered at that time. He knew Hong Zhuang's personality. No matter how much pain she had suffered, she would talk about it with a light look and wouldn't let others worry at all. But it was such a Hong Zhuang that made him feel even more distressed. Di Beichen held Bailey Hong Zhuang tightly in his arms, his low voice hoarse and nervous. Wife, don't do such dangerous things in the future. Di Beichen said solemnly. Chapter 1675. Di Beichen had never worried about anything in the first 10 years of his life, and now Hong Zhuang was the only person he was worried about. The thought that Hong Zhuang might leave him was unbearable. Bailey Hong Zhuang's lips curved into a happy smile as she nodded. Okay. The two hugged each other quietly. That night, the two talked a lot. From the past to the present, from never knowing each other to loving each other until the two fell asleep. While Bailey Hong Zhuang and Di Beichen were enjoying this quiet and peaceful moment, Haimu had been accompanying the three beasts to eat. He was the young master's shadow guard, and now he had become a contract beast breeder. It seemed that he would have to do this all the time. The results of Bailey Hong Zhuang and the others caused an uproar in Kanglin City, and the practitioners of the Mercenary Union also spread the news. Even if they did not know Bailey Hong Zhuang and the others, at least they were all from Kanglin City, and they had even seen Bailey Hong Zhuang and the others. This alone was enough for them to brag about. Almost as long as they met mercenaries from other places, they would brag about it. The students of Kanglin College were in the top 100 of the assessment competition, and this news spread far and wide as the mercenaries talked about it. 1 spread to 10, 10 spread to 100, and soon, the news had been known by many practitioners. Originally, many cultivators who wanted to enter Lingyin College and Beihai College chose Kanglin College after knowing the results of Kanglin College. In the past, Kanglin College was suppressed by Lingyin College and Beihai College, and everyone thought that the strength of Kanglin College was not as good as the other two colleges. However, the results were the most important. When the cultivators knew the results of the Azure Water College, all the previous rumors had no meaning. At least Lingyin College and Beihai College had never had such a proud result. Not to mention the first place of the top 100, even the last place of the top 100 had never appeared. At this point, Kanglin College was not comparable to Lingyin College and Beihai College. Once the news came out, the enrollment of Lingyin College and Beihai College dropped sharply. Not only that, even the students of the two major schools couldn't hold back after learning about this matter. Many students were preparing to drop out and go to the Azure Water School. After discovering this, Jian Qingxiu and Su Mingkong were dumbfounded. Even though they were prepared for the reduction of the student union, the situation was obviously worse than they thought. This was because they had neglected the existence of the Mercenary Association in Azure Water City. The Mercenary Guild was the organization with the largest number of people in the Shengxian continent. Any news that spread from the Mercenary Guild would spread across the entire continent in a very short period of time. Jian Qingxiu and Su Mingkong racked their brains to get the students back, but none of their actions could move the determination of the cultivators to go to Kanglan College. Lingyin College had always paid attention to the royal family, and many civilian cultivators were suppressed in Lingyin College. The reason why they stayed in Lingyin College was because of the fame of Lingyin College, but in fact, they were more interested in Kanglan College, because the Azure Water School truly treated everyone equally. Now, the Kanglan College was more famous than the Lingyin College. Why would they continue to stay here? Chapter 1676. Ren Tianxiong and Huan Chuyu also expected that this year's enrollment results would be better than usual, but after seeing the cultivators gathered outside the school, they were surprised. All the inns in Songlan City were full. Not only that, but almost all the places that could rest were filled with cultivators who wanted to enter the school. Even though the prices of the inns had risen again and again, young cultivators still came in an endless stream. Not only the inns, but the restaurant's business was also rising. Originally, it was not the time for the school to enroll, but seeing so many cultivators gathered outside, Ren Tianxiong and Huan Chuyu decided to enroll first. Not only did the number of cultivators increase, but even the number of rich merchants who wanted to sponsor the expansion of the school increased. This situation could be said to be the most glorious in the history of the school. The anger in Ren Tianxiong and Huan Chuyu's hearts had long been swept away. Lu Huayan and the others were all proud of their success. No matter where they went, their faces were full of smiles. Now, as long as the cultivators of Songlan School mentioned that they were students of the school, they would feel supreme glory. This situation was completely different from the bleak past. After seeing that the school was developing in a good direction, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also said their goodbyes. They came back this time to be able to contribute to the school. Now that the effect had been achieved, there was no use for them to continue to stay. What's more, because there were more and more foreign cultivators, no matter where they went, they would attract a lot of exclamations. Not only that, even if they stayed in the dormitory for special admission students, there would also be cultivators waiting outside so that they could speak a few words to them. After seeing the situation become more and more intense, everyone wisely decided not to continue to stay here. Ren Tianxiong and the others knew that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were leaving, and they also sent them off. If you have time, come back to the school and have a look. We will always welcome you back. Ren Tianxiong looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others with a face full of smiles. His appearance was completely different from before. Originally, he had always felt guilty. Songlan School kept falling in his hands, and he really let down the previous principal. He didn't think that the heavens would treat him so well and instead lead the school to unprecedented glory. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others smiled and nodded. We will. The Azure Water School was the place where they met and had their best memories. If there was a chance in the future, they would definitely come back to take a look. Lu Qingyue stood beside Huan Chuyu. Her eyes flickered as she looked at Gong Shaoqing and said, Big Brother Gong, I will definitely come and find you. Gong Shaoqing nodded slightly. Okay. In addition to recruiting cultivators, Tiangang Zong also recruited excellent alchemists. Therefore, Lu Qingyue has decided to participate in the alchemist assessment. As long as she passes the alchemist assessment, she can become an alchemist of Tiangang sect. This way, she would be able to accompany Big Brother Gong. It was not easy for an ordinary alchemist to participate in the alchemist assessment of Tiangang sect, but with Di Beichun, a place to participate in the assessment was nothing. Good luck. We're all waiting for you. Dong Fangyu smiled. Although they came back this time, the problem between Gong Shaoqing and Lu Qingyue had not been completely resolved. Chapter 1677. With Lu Qingyue's talent in alchemy, it should not be difficult to pass the assessment of Tiangang sect. What's more, Tiangang sect has Gong Shaoqing, Lu Qinhua will definitely do her best to pass the assessment. Gong Xiaoqing has always had a cold temperament. Except for Lu Qinhua, other women will not care about him. As long as Lu Qinhua continues to persevere, they believe that Gong Xiaoqing will be defeated by Lu Qinhua. Hearing this, Lu Qinhua smiled and nodded. I will. Xiao Jiqing looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and said, Boss, I will go home first. When the 3 months are up, I will go to Tiangang's sect to find you. Okay, I will wait for you at Tiangang's sect. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. After coming out for so long, everyone should go back. However, when she thought of her parents, her eyes could not help but flash a deep light. Di Beichen seemed to know Bailey Hongzhuang's inner thoughts. His right hand slowly rested on Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder, giving a little comfort. At least, he has always been by Hongzhuang's side. We are also leaving. See you at Tiangang sect. Dong Fangyu smiled brightly. He used to feel bored at home, but now that he has been out for so long, he really wants to go home and take a look. Goodbye. Everyone waved their hands, and the golden sunlight shone on everyone, warm and bright. Sunny and comfortable smiles filled everyone's faces. When they meet next time, everyone's identity will be different. Now they're standing here as students of Kanglin College, and the next time they meet, they will be cultivators of Tiangang sect. Di Beichen took Bailey Hongzhuang's small hand, his handsome face filled with a doting smile. Wife, let's go. Bailey Hongzhuang's smile was as elegant and indifferent as a lotus. Okay. The next moment, Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang went forward together. He Mu hurriedly followed behind Di Beichen. The 3 bees stuck to his body, one on each of his shoulders and one in his arms. The 3 bees kept jumping up and down, scratching black wood from time to time. He Mu felt very helpless about this. Ever since he got together with the 3 beasties, these were the most chaotic days of his life. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen pretended not to see it. It was rare for the 3 beasts to like He Mu so much, so the 2 of them could spend some quality time together. Ren Tianxiong and Huan Chuyu looked at the departing figures and sighed with emotion. The one who left the deepest impression on them was Bailey Hongzhuang. If it wasn't for Bailey Hongzhuang, Gong Xiaoqing and the others wouldn't have achieved such results. In the short span of 2 years, they had all transformed. Lu Huayin and Fu Hongbo were the most emotional. No wonder Bailey Hongzhuang refused their invitation. Just by relying on Bailey Hongzhuang's ability, they already had the confidence to refuse. Speaking of which, the 2 of them were even more fortunate that they insisted on inviting Bailey Hongzhuang to the college. If they had given up at that time, then they wouldn't have such an opportunity now. Now that Kanglin College's reputation was getting more and more resounding, as the teachers of the special enrollment class, they were extremely loved and respected. This kind of feeling was really what they had been pursuing. Lu Qinhua kept looking at Gong Xiaoqing's back until he gradually disappeared from her sight. No matter what, she must become an alchemist of Tiangang sect. Chapter 1678. Bailey Hongzhuang walked all the way. Both of them were not in a hurry. 3 months' time was enough for them to go back and forth between Limitless Palace and Tiangang sect. After not being together for a long time, the 2 of them also enjoyed such a relaxing time. They didn't know what was going on and followed Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang not far away. Looking at the route, it was obvious that they weren't going back to Tiangang sect. He didn't know where the young master and young madam were going, but he had always been wherever the young master was, so it didn't matter where the goal was. The 3 beasties obviously didn't want to disturb Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen, so they were always with He Mu. What's more, they could only be bullied by their master usually, but now they could bully He Mu. This feeling was really good. Under such circumstances, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen went on a scenic tour and were extremely happy. Limitless Palace. After Gu Taihong returned from the assessment competition, he immediately told the news of Bailey Hongzhuang to Yulinfeng. After hearing Gu Taihong's description, Yulinfeng's eyes also revealed a bit of surprise. You said that Bailey girl is the sweetheart of Tiangang sect's young sect master. Gu Taihong nodded. Yes, it is said that Miss Bailey is Di Beichen's fiancée. Di Beichen went to the assessment competition specifically to pick up Bailey Hongzhuang, and Di Beichun didn't hide his love for Miss Bailey in everyone's eyes. That look, it was obvious that he wanted to announce it to the world. Recalling the situation at that time, Gu Taihong explained the situation in detail. Di Beichun's approach was tantamount to publicly acknowledging Bailey Hongzhuang's identity. As the young lord of Tiangang's sect, Di Beichun naturally did things after careful consideration. Since he did so, it proved that he had made up his mind to marry Bailey Hongzhuang. This news surprised everyone. After all, almost everyone thought that Han Shilin and Di Beichun were a couple. Even though Di Beichun brought a woman to Tiangang's sect 2 years ago, and this news was known to many people, most people did not take this matter to heart. This was because it was impossible for an ordinary woman to truly marry Di Beichun. It was precisely because no one had paid attention to it that everyone found it inconceivable when they saw Di Beichun announce it to the world. Yu Linfeng looked lazy and casual. His eyes flickered. I know Di Beichun. He's a good young man. As a young master of Tiangang's sect, Di Beichun has always been the focus of everyone's attention. He had also noticed that this young man's strength and will were extremely good. Di Beichun had always been very diligent in his cultivation and had never had any bad habits. Although he inexplicably left Tiangang Zone 5 years ago, he came back later and resolved a lot of troubles in a swift and decisive manner. That swift and decisive manner was very similar to him. He also felt that Situ Yan had found a very good successor. However, he did not expect that Bailey Hongzhuang would be Di Beichun's sweetheart. However, this did not seem to be a bad thing. He had a good impression of Tiangang's sect. If Bailey Hongzhuang was really with Di Beichun, then the distance between Limitless Palace and Tiangang's sect would be much closer. Bailey girl chose to enter Tiangang's sect. Did you tell her to come to Limitless Palace? Chapter 1679. I have already revealed it to Miss Bailey. I believe that with Miss Bailey's intelligence and wisdom, she will definitely understand. Gu Taihong spoke slowly. At that time, he noticed the change in Bailey Hongzhuang's expression. Obviously, Bailey Hongzhuang knew all of this. Yu Linfeng nodded. In that case, it's fine. Go and investigate the process of how Bailey girl and Di Beichun met. He was really curious about the disciple he had chosen. In the ruins, Bailey Hongzhuang's performance had always been very good. Whether it was her perception, potential, or endurance, they were all much better than ordinary cultivators. Just the relationship between her and the Lan family had already surprised him. He had already learned from Bailey Hongzhuang that she had been stranded in a small empire. Logically speaking, Bailey Hongzhuang, who grew up in a small empire, should not have had the opportunity to know Di Beichun. However, his disciple was really not an ordinary person. Even if the Lan family had taken away her colorful divine pearl, she had become the wife of the young sect master of Tiangang's sect and had him as her master. He suddenly realized that Bailey Hongzhuang was a very lucky person. Yes, Gu Taiyong bowed. After seeing that Yu Linfeng had no other orders, he left. After Mo Yindue returned to Shitian Pavilion, his subordinates told him about the important things that had happened in the past 2 years. In Shitian Pavilion, different positions had different authorities. The most important authority was naturally in the hands of Mo Yunjue. Since Mo Yunjue participated in the assessment competition, Shitian Pavilion had been accepting ordinary tasks. However, for some very difficult and involved many tasks, they had to wait for the young master to come back and ask for instructions before they could make a decision. As soon as Mo Yunjue returned to Shitian Pavilion, he fell into a busy state. He had stayed in the assessment competition for a long time. The matters of Shitian Pavilion had piled up like a mountain. Speaking of which, participating in the assessment competition was the most willful thing he had done so far. However, it was all worth it. Being able to spend so much time with Hongzhuang was already the best thing that could happen to him. Young Master, Tiangang's sect's young Master Di Beichun, has also issued a mission. When Mo Yunjue, who was originally indifferent, heard the 3 words Di Beichun, his eyes suddenly narrowed, and he looked sharply at the speaker. What mission did Di Beichun issue? Feeling Mo Yunjue's sharp gaze, The cultivator could not help but be stunned for a moment. Then, he immediately handed the letter to Di Baichun. Di Baichun opened the letter. The content was simple. Di Baichun confirmed that Lan Yunxiao and his wife were imprisoned in the Yu clan. He hoped that they could help him find out where they were imprisoned. After seeing Lan Yunxiao's name, Mo Yunjua's expression couldn't help but change. The Lan clan had never interacted with Tiangang's sect. It was very strange that Di Baichun suddenly wanted to investigate the Lan clan situation. However, Mo Yunjua quickly thought of the jade pendant on Bailey Hongzhuang's chest. Di Baichun, Lan clan, Hongzhuang, Lan clan's keepsake. Mo Yunjua's mind quickly flashed with these keywords. Soon, his deep black eyes gradually flashed with understanding. However, he was still shocked. As the young master of Shirtian Pavilion, he had access to countless information. Often, he would only need to look at a few keywords to know the truth. Chapter 1680. Since even Di Baichun couldn't find out, it meant that the Yu clan had sealed this information very tightly. The matter of Lan Yunxiao and his wife was very sensational, but the Lan clan had sealed the information very well. Almost no one knew about it, except for a few people who were very well informed. Lan Yunxiao and his wife's daughter was forcefully robbed of the rainbow pearl and was on the verge of death. The instigator was Lan Yunxiao's elder brother, Lan Jingquang. Currently, the Lan clan's proudest young cultivator was Lan Qingyan, but those who knew the truth were somewhat disdainful. Because the reason why Lan Qingyan was able to achieve such results was undoubtedly through plundering her younger sister's things to reach this step. However, Lan Qingyan obviously didn't care about this. These years, as Lan Qingyan's strength grew stronger, her attitude also became more and more arrogant, faintly causing some people to be dissatisfied. However, Lan Qingyan's strength and talent were indeed shocking. Even if some people were dissatisfied, they wouldn't say it out loud, because no one was willing to offend a strong opponent. The Yu clan had actually imprisoned Lan Yunxiao and his wife. Once this news spread, the entire aristocratic world would be shocked. Lan Yunxiao and his wife had disappeared for many years. Ever since that incident, they had disappeared without a trace. No one would have thought that they were actually imprisoned by the Yu clan. Di Baichun cared so much about Lan Yunxiao and his wife. Obviously, this was an extremely important matter to him. In addition, Hongzhuang had the Lan clan's jade pendant. From how much Hongzhuang cared about the jade pendant, he could determine that Hongzhuang was related to the Lan clan. Hongzhuang wasn't General Bailey's daughter. This was something he already knew. He remembered that Hongzhuang had always been an extremely famous waste in Fengbo country. The reason she became a waste was because her dantian was broken. It was because her dantian was broken that Hongzhuang couldn't cultivate and led such a miserable life. Lan Yunxiao and his wife's daughter was forcefully robbed of the rainbow pearl by the Yu clan. Her dantian was destroyed, and she was on the verge of death. Lan Yunxiao and his wife had to beg the Yu clan for help when they were walking. Once all these things were connected, Mo Yunjue already knew the truth. However, he had never thought that Hongzhuang's real identity would be like this. At this moment, Mo Yunjue finally understood why Hongzhuang would reveal such an expression when he looked at the jade pendant and asked if Hongzhuang was related to the Lan family. With Hongzhuang's identity, once her true identity was exposed, it would cause a lot of problems. Lan Jingquang and the Yu clan might even try to kill him. It was because of this that Hongzhuang was so wary of him. This was not because Hongzhuang did not trust him, but because this matter involved too many things. After understanding this, Mo Yunjue could not help but feel guilty. He did not know the reason behind this, but he felt that Hongzhuang did not trust him enough. This was really wrong. However, Mo Yunjue could not help but feel sorry for Bailey Hongzhuang. Hongzhuang's past was already very tragic. He never thought that her real identity would be even more pitiful. He clearly knew that after this incident, many people lamented how pitiful the child who had her rainbow pearl stolen was. She was supposed to be a genius, but because of this persecution, she lost her life. Chapter 1681. Mo Yunjue's eyes became colder and colder as he thought of what Hong Zhuang had suffered all these years. Hong Zhuang's suffering was all because of the Yu clan and Lan Jingquang's family. These bastards were really despicable. They even had the heart to hurt an infant. Moreover, Hong Zhuang was Lan Jingquang's younger brother's daughter. Lan Jingquang's family was worse than pigs and dogs. Damn it! Mo Yunjue clenched his fists. His handsome and cold face was filled with murderous intent. These bastards actually dared to treat Hong Zhuang like this. He would make them pay a heavy price for what they had done in the past. Seeing Mo Yunjue's sudden expression, the cultivators of Shitian Pavilion couldn't help but be surprised. They hadn't seen their young master with such an expression for a long time. Every time their young master showed such an expression, it meant that someone was going to be unlucky. Could it be the Tian Gang sect's young sect master, Di Beichen? Everyone kept thinking. After all, this letter belonged to Di Beichen. Now that they knew that Di Beichen was their young master's love rival, it was normal for them to have conflicts. Seeing their young master's angry expression, could it be that their young master had a direct confrontation with Di Beichen? Thinking of this, the cultivators of Shitian Pavilion became excited. They were all people who wished for the world to be in chaos. For a long time, there had never been a woman who could move their young master's heart. Now that their young master finally found a woman he liked, they naturally couldn't let her go. Go and check on the Yu clan for me. Check if the Yu clan has a dungeon or some other secret place. Mo Yunjue's voice was heavy. Since Di Beichen had asked them to investigate this matter, then Di Beichen must have confirmed that Hong Zhuang's parents were still alive and had been imprisoned by the Yu clan all these years. As soon as he thought about how the Yu clan had harmed Lan Yunxiao's family to such an extent, they even imprisoned them, he was unable to restrain his anger. At this moment, he finally understood why Hong Zhuang was so desperate to cultivate. Back then, in the ruins, how dangerous was the inheritance? Even he had fainted under that kind of pressure, but Hong Zhuang had persevered. Her perseverance was simply astonishing. From the looks of it, Hong Zhuang was doing her best to increase her strength. That was because she had to increase her strength in order to save her parents. Thinking of Hong Zhuang's usual indifferent appearance, it was hard to imagine that she was under so much pressure. The more Mo Yunjue thought about it, the more he felt that what he had done was not enough. Hong Zhuang had suffered so much in her heart. He was afraid that other than Di Beichen, no one else knew about it. He would do his best to help Hong Zhuang. Only by rescuing Hong Zhuang's parents as soon as possible could Hong Zhuang be at ease. Hearing Mo Yunjue's words, the Shitian Pavilion's cultivators were a little surprised. Why was he suddenly connected to the Yu clan? Their young master had never been in contact with the Yu clan. However, they had always known how powerful their young master was. The moment their young master gave the order, they didn't think about anything else and immediately retreated. They didn't need to ask for any reason. All they needed to do was to get an accurate answer as soon as possible. The Shitian Pavilion's investigation would definitely not allow any mistakes. Chapter 1682. Go and investigate the Lan family's Lan Yunxiao's matter. Investigate it carefully and bring me all the useful information. Mo Yunjue's handsome brows knitted tightly. At that time, he only knew a little about this matter, but he wasn't clear enough. Now that he knew that this matter was related to Hong Zhuang, he naturally had to investigate it thoroughly. He had to understand everything that had happened in order to know how to help Hong Zhuang to the greatest extent. This subordinate obeys. The man bowed and immediately walked out. As long as it was something the young master instructed them to do, they wouldn't have any doubts. After everyone left, Mo Yunjue looked at the bright moon outside the window. His eyes flickered with cold, killing intent. This group of people who were worse than beasts actually dared to do such an unforgivable thing to Hong Zhuang. He would definitely make them pay the price. After thinking carefully, Mo Yunjue suddenly understood why Di Beichen would let Hong Zhuang participate in the assessment alone. Obviously, they already knew about the mystery of Hong Zhuang's birth long before the assessment started. Di Beichen had probably been investigating this matter all this time. According to the information from his subordinates, Di Beichun had already found the Heaven Splitter Tower for some time. However, because he wasn't in the Heaven Splitter Tower, he didn't respond to this mission. This meant that Di Beichun had always been concerned about Hong Zhuang. He had always been busy with Hong Zhuang's matters. Hong Zhuang participated in the assessment to increase her strength, while Di Beichun took advantage of this time to think of a way to save Hong Zhuang's parents. However, because the Yu clan was too secretive, Di Beichun had never been able to find out the exact location of the Lan family's parents. As a medical family, the Yu clan's strength couldn't be underestimated. They were far more powerful than ordinary cultivation families. For so many years, many seriously ill cultivators had sought the Yu clan's help. It was precisely because of this that the Yu clan could be said to have disciples all over the world. Even if Di Beichun was the Tiangang sect's young sect leader, it would not be easy for him to deal with the Yu clan. Therefore, Di Beichun had his hands and feet tied. He could only think of a way to save Lan Yunxiao and his wife without disturbing the Yu family. As long as Lan Yunxiao and his wife were rescued, everything else would become much simpler because they wouldn't have any more worries. Although Tiangang's sect's strength was strong, they were not as good as Shutian Tower in terms of intelligence. The Shutian Pavilion's information network could be said to have covered the entire Shengxian continent. As long as it was information they wanted, they would definitely be able to find it. However, the Yu family's roots were so complicated. Adding on the fact that Lan Yunxiao was originally an extremely famous figure in the Shengxian continent, they would definitely do it secretly if they wanted to imprison Lan Yunxiao. Therefore, it would take a certain amount of time to investigate all of this. Similarly, they couldn't investigate this matter personally. They could only find out from the mouths of the Yu clan members. It was obviously impossible to find out such a secretive topic in a short period of time. However, with their methods, they would definitely be able to obtain this information after spending a period of time. Thinking of this, Mo Yunjue decided to send a letter back to Di Beichun. He wanted to let Di Beichun know his attitude and not act blindly without thinking. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun went on a scenic tour. They were very happy. Occasionally, they would play around like an ordinary couple. No one would have thought that Di Beichun was the Tiangang sect's famous young sect leader. Chapter 1683. Under such a playful situation, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were very happy every day. For them, to be able to live happily together and watch the clouds roll by was the happiest life. However, they couldn't have such a life now. This was because they still had too many things to do. Only after completing everything that needed to be done would they be able to live such a life. There were some responsibilities that they had to bear. Such happy days passed very quickly. Unknowingly, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun had arrived at the boundary of Limitless Palace. Not far ahead is Limitless Palace. Di Beichun introduced while holding Bailey Hongzhuang with his right hand and pointing to the mountains in front with his left hand. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang looked ahead. Previously, there was a dense mountain range, and she couldn't see the existence of the sect at all. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't find it strange. Without thinking, she knew that this was Limitless Palace's trick, just like Tiangang's sect. In this way, only cultivators who knew where Limitless Palace was would go there. Ordinary people wouldn't find it all. How are we going to go in later? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichun doubtfully. This wasn't Tiangang's sect. Di Beichun couldn't remove this enchantment. So how are they going to go in? Di Beichun's lips curled into a devilish smile. Although we can't see the situation of Limitless Palace here, the disciples guarding the gate can see us. We just need to ask them to pass the message. As the young sect master of Tiangang's sect, he often ran between various sections. He was very familiar with this kind of situation. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Her beautiful face was filled with a beautiful smile. I see. The enchantment after 1,000 years had improved a lot compared to 1,000 years ago. It was very convenient. Hey Mu, follow, Di Beichun suddenly said. Previously, because he wanted to be alone with Hongzhuang, Hey Mu and the three beasts had been keeping a certain distance from them. Now that they were about to enter Limitless Palace, Hey Mu should also appear. Otherwise, they would be trapped outside Limitless Palace later. Hearing Di Baichen's words, He Mu quickly appeared beside Di Baichen. Yes, young master. Seeing He Mu appear, Di Baichen nodded. The three beasts then continued to move forward. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at He Mu, and the three beasts were getting along with each other, and her beautiful eyes were filled to the breast. It had to be said that having He Mu by Di Baichen's side was really an excellent thing. Di Baichen, have you been a limitless palace before? Seeing Di Baichen's familiar look, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but ask. In the past, I came here with my master. However, I only came here once, so I'm not familiar with it. Di Baichen said slowly. Between the various sects, other than their mortal enemies, most of the other sects had dealings with each other. Many times, the various sects would organize some competitions to promote the enthusiasm of their disciples. Only in a competitive environment, cultivators would be able to work harder. This was because every once in a while, the various sects would organize some competitions. Especially those sects that had a close relationship with each other, they would organize it together. Tiangang sect and Limitless Palace weren't very close, but their relationship wasn't bad. Chapter 1684. Not long after, Di Baichen stopped his footsteps and spoke to the mountain in front of him. Tiangang sect's Di Baichen and Bailey Hongzhuang are here to see the palace master. Please pass on the message. Following Di Baichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang realized that the barrier in front of her suddenly disappeared. A towering mountain appeared in front of her. On top of the mountain, a golden palace stood impressively. Looking at the style of the palace, Bailey Hongzhuang could recognize that this was Limitless Palace. The ruins in the small world also had the same style. Although the size and layout were different, the style was extremely similar. Just like how every cultivator had a certain style, the things they did also had the same characteristics. Young Master Di, please wait a moment. We will pass on the message immediately. The disciples guarding the mountain gate of Limitless Palace bowed when they saw Di Baichen. They didn't dare to be negligent at all. Many thanks. Di Baichen smiled faintly. One of the disciples guarding the mountain gate quickly walked towards the top of Limitless Palace. As the young sect master of Tiangang sect, Di Baichen's reputation was extremely resounding. However, they didn't expect that Di Baichen would suddenly come to Limitless Palace. It really surprised them. No matter what, he couldn't be negligent. He had to immediately report this matter to the palace master. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen calmly waited at the same place. They believed that the palace master would definitely meet them. Only He Mu stood at the same place in puzzlement. He didn't understand why the young master and young madam would suddenly come to Limitless Palace. In his impression, although Tiangang sect and Limitless Palace had a friendly relationship, they didn't have frequent interactions. The young master had never said that he was coming to Tiangang sect. Now that he suddenly appeared here, it was a bit strange. Moreover, from the looks of it, the young madam was also very interested in Limitless Palace. But why did they come here? The three beasties' gaze also fell on Limitless Palace's building. They naturally knew the purpose of their master coming here. They only hoped that their master could become the successor of Limitless Palace. That would be the best. They understood Gu Taihong's intention when the assessment had ended. No matter what, Master must make a trip to Limitless Palace. Not long after, the disciple who went to inform Di Baichen came back. He bowed to Di Baichen and said, Young Master Di, Miss Bailey, the palace lord invites you. Di Baichen and Bailey Hongzhuang cupped their hands towards the disciple who was guarding the mountain gate. Then, they slowly walked towards the top of Limitless Palace. After Di Baichen and his group left, the disciples guarding the mountain gate couldn't help but talk. I wonder why the young sect master of Tiangang sect suddenly came to our place. I don't know. I've never heard of this before. However, I have heard before that the young lord of Tiangang sect is powerful and handsome. Today, it is really extraordinary. The woman beside Di Baichen is also very outstanding. But I seem to have heard her name somewhere before. It sounds very familiar. A man frowned. When he heard the name, he felt that he had heard it before. But after thinking for a long time, he couldn't remember when he had heard it. Bailey Hongzhuang. It seems to be the name of the first cultivator in this assessment. That's right. It's her. Chapter 1685. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun slowly walked towards the top of Limitless Palace. If anyone was here, they would notice that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun seemed to be walking very slowly. However, their speed was actually very fast. In the blink of an eye, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun had already arrived at Limitless Palace. In their line of sight, a magnificent hall appeared in their line of sight. Compared to the other sects, which were majestic and astonishing, Limitless Palace gave people a special kind of beauty and charm, which left a deep impression on people. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved into a shallow smile. At this moment, looking at Limitless Palace in front of her, she had a very familiar feeling. Di Beichun noticed that Bailey Hongzhuang seemed to be very happy. His eyebrows were also filled with a touch of joy. As long as Hongzhuang was happy, he would be happy. With the appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun, the gaze of Limitless Palace's disciples fell on them. Limitless Palace's management had always been strict. Ordinary people were not allowed to enter. Therefore, when the disciples saw Bailey Hongzhuang and the 3 people and 3 beasts, they couldn't help but be surprised. Who are they? Why did they appear in Limitless Palace? I don't know. They are not the cultivators that Elder Gu recruited this time. That man seems to be the young sect master of Tiangang sect. I have seen him before when he came to the sect with the sect master of Tiangang sect. Among the cultivators present, there were people who had seen a lot. They immediately recognized Di Beichun's identity. As Di Beichun's identity was revealed, it set off a huge uproar among the Limitless Palace's disciples. He is the young and promising young sect master of Tiangang sect? Then could the woman beside him be Han Xiling? Hearing Han Xiling's name, Bailey Hongzhuang's expression couldn't help but change a little. In the end, Han Xiling died in her hands. Di Beichun obviously knew about this news. However, ever since Di Beichun brought her back from the assessment competition, Di Beichun never mentioned anything about Han Xiling. Seeing that Di Beichun didn't mention it, she naturally wouldn't mention it. She was afraid that Di Beichun already knew the reason behind Han Xiling's death. Because he didn't want the situation to become awkward, Di Beichun never mentioned it. However, she believed that after go to Tiangang sect, Han Hongyi would definitely ask this question first. To Di Beichun, she would tell the truth, but to Han Hongyi, she would not. Because she wouldn't give Han Xian any reason to attack her. Just when Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun arrived at Limitless Palace and were thinking about where to meet Yulin Feng, a familiar figure appeared in their line of sight. Young sect master Di, Miss Bailey, you're here. Gu Taihong's face was filled with a thick smile. After he knew that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun came to Limitless Palace together, he immediately rushed over. He knew that Bailey Hongzhuang understood his meaning. Not only that, Bailey Hongzhuang came so quickly. It was really satisfying. Gu Taihong bowed to Di Beichun. Although he was older than Di Beichun's status was much higher than him. Elder Gu. Bailey Hongzhuang bowed to Gu Taihong. Di Beichun's status was unusual, but she was just an ordinary disciple in front of Gu Taihong. Chapter 1686. Gu Taihong was shocked. Bailey Hongzhuang was the young palace master of Limitless Palace. How could she bow to him? Although this was only the second time he saw Bailey Hongzhuang, he had been following the palace master for a long time. He understood the palace master's personality. Since the palace master had decided to let Bailey Hongzhuang be the successor of Limitless Palace, this decision would not change. The palace master was a mysterious figure in Shengxian continent. As long as the palace master made a decision, there would never be any problems. Even though the palace master seemed to do as he pleased when making a decision, as if he never cared about it, but in reality, every decision he made was carefully considered. Since the palace master chose Bailey Hongzhuang, there must be a reason for it. With regards to the palace master's decision, he only had one thought: obey. Seeing Gu Taihong's action, Bailey Hongzhuang was shocked for a moment. She couldn't help but ask, Elder Gu, what are you doing? Gu Taihong shook his head. You can't bow to me. Di Beichun understood after seeing Gu Taihong's attitude. Gu Taihong was an important figure in Limitless Palace. Other than Palace Master Yu, Gu Taihong's position was the highest. However, Gu Taihong didn't dare to accept Hong Zhuang's bow. Just from this, it was enough for him to judge many things. It seemed that Hong Zhuang was right. Palace Master, you really intended to let Hong Zhuang be the young Palace Master of Limitless Palace. Otherwise, Gu Taihong wouldn't have such an attitude. He Mu was stunned after seeing Gu Taihong's attitude. Could it be that Elder Gu knew the young madam's identity and did this? Although many people already knew that the young madam and young master were in love, everyone thought that the young madam was young master's fiancée. Logically speaking, Elder Gu wouldn't be like this. When the cultivators of Limitless Palace saw this scene, they were dumbfounded. They couldn't believe what they saw. Elder Gu was the elder with the highest position in Limitless Palace. Why would she not dare to accept Bailey Hong Zhuang's salute? This was a little too strange. Is that woman in white Han Shieling? Even if she's Han Shieling, Elder Gu doesn't need to be so courteous, right? I don't think it's Han Shieling. I heard that Han Shieling likes to wear green clothes, not white. It can't be her. Who is this woman? His status is actually so high. The disciples looked at Bailey Hong Zhuang in confusion. They had never seen Bailey Hong Zhuang before. In addition, the cultivators who participated in the assessment had all returned to their respective clans and were not in Limitless Palace. Therefore, no one in Limitless Palace knew Bailey Hong Zhuang. Since you're already here, why don't we go and see the Palace Lord first? Gu Taihong's face was brimming with a warm and amiable smile as he looked at Bailey Hong Zhuang and asked slowly. Hearing this, Bailey Hong Zhuang and Di Baichen nodded. That's good. They came here today to see Palace Lord Yu. Only after seeing Palace Lord Yu, they could decide on their next plan. Gu Taihong nodded slightly and immediately led Bailey Hong Zhuang and Di Baichen inside. Chapter 1687. As Bailey Hong Zhuang and the others disappeared from their sight, the cultivators of Limitless Palace were in an uproar. Forget about the young master of Tiangang's sect. That white-robed girl is really a big shot. I rarely see Elder Gu being so respectful to someone. It's as if she's a very important person. As far as I know, the most outstanding girl in the younger generation is Lan Qinyan from the Lan family. Could that white-robed girl be Lan Qinyan? Stop joking. No matter who that white-robed girl is, she's definitely not Lan Qinyan. Why? You'll know after staying in Limitless Palace for a long time. The Palace Lord has never liked the Lan family. There has never been a cultivator from the Lan family in our Limitless Palace. This news is considered a publicly acknowledged secret in our Limitless Palace. It's best if you don't mention the Lan family. Hearing this, a surprised expression appeared on the faces of the disciples. They didn't know there was such a thing. It seemed that they had to be careful not to mention this aspect in the future. Bailey Hong Zhuang followed behind Gu Taihong as they walked in Limitless Palace. The entire Limitless Palace was pale gold in color. Every decoration was meticulously done. At a glance, it gave off a beautiful feeling. Although it was dazzling, it gave off a sense of approachability. It gave off a strange feeling, but one couldn't help but admit that it gave off a good impression. Wow, the environment here is so similar to the ancient ruins. Xiaohei couldn't help but sigh. Thinking back to when she first entered the ancient ruins in the small world, her mind was shocked. She didn't expect that after coming to Limitless Palace, she would realize that the decorations were very similar. This should be Palace Lord Yu's style. It's beautiful. Baishir looked around happily. When his master entered the ancient ruins, he was in the midst of breaking through and didn't see everything in the ancient ruins. After that, he kept listening to Xiaohei and Xiao by talking about the various things that happened at that time. He couldn't see it with his own eyes, so he felt a little depressed. He regretted that he had to break through during that time and missed such a good opportunity to fight side by side with his master. He didn't expect to see this scene in Limitless Palace. Although it wasn't an ancient ruin, he could roughly understand the situation in the ancient ruins. Limitless Palace's layout is really special. It makes one yearn for it, Xiaobai said with a smile. The buildings of each sect gave people a different feeling. Tiangang Zone was more shocking, majestic and bright, showing justice and atmosphere. On the other hand, Limitless Palace gave off a sense of elegance, rigor, charm, and solemnity. Looking at the scene in front of her, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but think of her master. A man like her master, this was really in line with his style. Limitless Palace was very big. Even with Gu Taihong leading the way, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others still had to walk for a long time before arriving at Limitless Palace's conference hall. When they reached the entrance of the meeting hall, Gu Taihong smiled and said, "Young Sect Master D, Miss Bailey, the Palace Lord is here." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. As Gu Taihong opened the door of the meeting hall, she and Di Beichen walked in together. Before entering, Di Beichen gave Heimu a look. Heimu immediately understood and stayed outside the meeting hall. Chapter 1688. Discussion Hall. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen walked in, they saw that the place was still covered in a faint golden color. It was very spacious and bright, and it felt very comfortable. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were obviously not in the mood to pay attention to this. Their gazes fell on the white figure at the front of the discussion hall. They saw Yulin Feng wearing a white robe. His elegant and handsome face had an elegant and calm smile. His calm expression was full of wisdom and indifference. Previously, Bailey Hongzhuang had only seen a wisp of Yulin Feng's spiritual sense in the ruins. Now that she saw Yulin Feng in person, she only felt that he was extraordinarily handsome. So far, she had seen many men with extraordinary looks in this world. For example, Di Beichen was handsome and not annoying, and Mo Yunjue was deep and resolute. Gong Shaoqing was cold and icy, and Dong Fangyu was sunny and charming. However, Yulin Feng gave people the same feeling as them. His whole body exuded a kind of elegance and grace. His handsome face was gentle and calm, as if he was calm and collected. Even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him, he would not bat an eyelid. Perhaps only Yulin Feng, with his strength and experience, could have this kind of feeling. No matter who it was, they would have to admit that Yulin Feng was an extremely charming man. After Yulin Feng saw Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen, his calm and collected face slowly raised a trace of a smile. Previously, when he saw Bailey Hongzhuang in the ruins, he felt that his disciple's appearance was extremely outstanding. Ordinary men simply could not match her. Now that he saw Di Beichen standing beside Bailey Hongzhuang, he felt that the two were extremely compatible. Standing together, they were a pair of jade. He had seen Han Shilling before, but Han Shilling and Di Beichen didn't match well when they stood together. This was because Han Shilling was not good enough for Di Beichen. "Greetings, Palace Lord Yu." Di Beichen took the lead and bowed to Yulin Feng. Although he hadn't met Yulin Feng many times, Yulin Feng was a famous figure in the Shangxian continent. In his heart, he greatly admired Yulin Feng. The fact that Yulin Feng had reached this point was already a legend. Many people were curious and admired him. He had never thought that he would meet Yulin Feng under such circumstances. The fate in this world was truly magical. "Greetings, Master." Bailey Hongzhuang bowed respectfully. Ever since she received Yulin Feng's inheritance in the ruins, Yulin Feng was already her master. Regardless of whether she would become the successor of Limitless Palace, Yulin Feng would always be her respected master. "Young Sect Master D, I never thought that I would meet you today." Yulin Feng smiled faintly. He didn't have the majesty and pressure of other sect masters. Instead, he was like a spring breeze, giving people an indescribable feeling of comfort. This junior also never thought of it. Di Beichen cupped his hands. If it wasn't for Hongzhuang telling him, he wouldn't have believed that such a thing would happen. Yulin Feng's gaze turned to Bailey Hongzhuang. "Little girl Bailey, your results in the assessment competition surprised me." He had long felt that Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't bad. As long as she worked hard, her future would be limitless. However, he never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would give him such a surprise in the assessment competition. It was truly shocking. Chapter 1689. After cultivating for such a long time on the stairway to heaven, her strength was able to break through again and again. After obtaining the rainbow pearl, her strength increased again. With the leap in strength, whether it was hunting monsters or dealing with cultivators, it was much easier than before. Moreover, after integrating with the rainbow pearl, she discovered the magical aspect of the rainbow pearl. It was no wonder that the Lan family valued the cultivators who possessed the rainbow pearl so much. This was a special inheritance that belonged to the Lan family. After obtaining the rainbow pearl, not only was the rainbow origin energy stronger than ordinary origin energy, but the cultivation speed was also much faster than usual. Under such an increase, the cultivator's strength would definitely be stronger than ordinary cultivators. The reason why Lan Qingyin could achieve such results today was inseparable from the rainbow pearl. Even if a cultivator with average cultivation talent obtained a rainbow pearl, his strength would be able to catch up with a genius cultivator. If it was a highly talented cultivator, his cultivation speed was simply unattainable by ordinary cultivators. She did not know how Lan Qingyin's cultivation talent was, but since Lan Qingyin could achieve such results, her talent should not be bad. Yu Linfeng glanced at Bailey Hongzhuang. Although Bailey Hongzhuang's body was surrounded by a special energy that prevented others from detecting her cultivation, he could still feel a little from Bailey Hongzhuang's aura. Compared to when he first saw her in the ruins, Bailey Hongzhuang's strength had obviously increased by a lot. The increase in strength was much higher than he had imagined. Even with the help of the rainbow pearl, there would not be such a huge increase in strength. After discovering this, Yu Linfeng was also a little surprised. It seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang was more outstanding than he had imagined. Her talent was probably even more powerful. He also understood that any cultivator who could possess the seven-color divine pearl would have outstanding talent. Bailey Hongzhuang's strength could increase to such a level in such a short period of time. If it was not due to other opportunities, then it was due to some special means. However, he did not intend to find out about these. Everyone would have their own secrets. Although he and Bailey Hongzhuang had not known each other for long, he could already see through Bailey Hongzhuang's character. His eyesight had always been very accurate. Just from Bailey Hongzhuang's current conversation, he could tell. It seemed that Di Beichen's eyesight was also very good. He could find his disciple in the vast sea of people and did not care about Bailey Hongzhuang's original identity at all. This was a pair of discerning eyes. What he hated most were those fellows who talked about equal social status. You don't need to be so humble. How much I have helped you? Yu Linfeng's. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's, but she did not answer him. The reason why her strength could increase so much was partly because of the inheritance she had received in the ancient ruins, and partly because of the existence of the Door of Darkness. The time in the desert world was much longer than the outside world. She would go to the desert world to cultivate whenever she had something to do. As a result, her cultivation time was much longer than ordinary cultivators. Moreover, not only could she increase her cultivation in the desert world, but she could also increase her strength and speed. If her cultivation speed was not fast enough in such a situation, it would be terrible. Chapter 1690. Yu Linfeng looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and then looked at Di Beichen. His deep and bright eyes were filled with wisdom. Since young sect Master D and Bailey Lass are here together, I believe Bailey Lass has already told you everything. Although this was the first time he met Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen, but from Gu Taihong's description, he knew that Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang's relationship was extremely strong. The assessment competition lasted for 2 years. It wasn't long, but it wasn't short either. The two of them had been separated for such a long time, but when they met again, they still helped each other in difficult times without any problems. Just this point alone was enough to prove how good their relationship was. If their relationship wasn't strong enough, they wouldn't be able to endure 2 years. What's more, with Di Beichen's condition, it was unknown how many women were around him. For so many years, other than Han Shieling, he had never heard of any other woman related to Di Beichen. Therefore, he was very optimistic about Di Beichen. Since the two of them had such a good relationship, Bailey Hongzhuang told Di Beichen about this matter to clear things up. If it wasn't for Di Beichen bringing Bailey Hongzhuang along, he was afraid that Bailey Hongzhuang wouldn't know the exact location of Limitless Palace. Following Yu Linfeng's recording, Di Beichen nodded his head. That's right. There was no need to hide this matter. With Yu Linfeng's intelligence and wisdom, He must have seen through everything. Bailey last chose to join Tiangang's sect instead of Limitless Palace. What were her plans? Yulin Feng spoke slowly. Since Bailey Hongzhuang was going to become the successor of Limitless Palace, then she would naturally have to stay in Limitless Palace. However, under the circumstances at that time, he could understand the reason why Bailey Hongzhuang chose Tiangang's sect. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. I plan to come and see Master first. She wasn't clear about the current situation. The reason why she came to Limitless Palace was to make plans for what would happen next. Hearing this, Yulin Feng already understood the meaning of Bailey Hongzhuang's words. You are my disciple. When the time comes, you will naturally take over Limitless Palace. Yulin Feng's voice was refined and magnetic. However, it's not bad for you to stay in Tiangang's sect now. It's not a bad choice for you to come to Limitless Palace after you've achieved some results in Tiangang's sect. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun had been separated for such a long time because of the assessment. If they came to Limitless Palace right after the assessment ended, the two of them would undoubtedly be separated again. As Bailey Hongzhuang's master, he naturally didn't want to affect the relationship between Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes were quietly filled with doubt, and she looked at Yulin Feng strangely. Master, what do you mean? You have just reunited with Di Beichun. If I were to ask you to come to Limitless Palace now, you would naturally be unwilling. You can cultivate in Tiangang's sect for now. However, half a year later, you'll have to cultivate with me for 3 months. If you want to become the young palace master of Limitless Palace, you still have a lot of areas to improve. Yulin Feng's face was filled with a faint smile. He was very satisfied with the disciple he had chosen. Bailey Hongzhuang's strength, talent, and perception were all good. However, if she wanted to become the successor of Limitless Palace, there was still a certain gap. Chapter 1691. After hearing Yulin Feng's words, Di Beichun's deep and enchanting eyes were filled with amazement. Yulin Feng's attitude was already very obvious. He intended to nurture Hongzhuang as the successor of Limitless Palace. This situation was far simpler and smoother than he had imagined. Yulin Feng did not put on any airs from the start to the end. On the contrary, he was very considerate of Hongzhuang, even though he knew that Yulin Feng's temper had always been very good, but this was still beyond his expectations. However, from Yulin Feng's expression, he could tell that Yulin Feng really thought highly of Hongzhuang. Thinking of this, Di Beichun's eyes couldn't help but soften a little. Hongzhuang was indeed a magical girl. No matter if it was luck or other things, she could always bring unspeakable surprises to people. Yulin Feng had chosen the successor of Limitless Palace just like that. According to normal times, this was simply impossible, but it just had to happen to Hongzhuang. After knowing Yulin Feng's attitude, Di Beichun's initial worries were completely put down. Obviously, Yulin Feng was very loving towards Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was touched. She didn't expect that her master would put himself in her shoes and think for her. Other than that, she was also blushing a little. It seemed that Elder Gu had already told her master about her relationship with Beichun. Thank you, master. Bailey Hongzhuang bowed respectfully. Her exquisite and beautiful face was filled with sincerity and gratitude. Since her master thought so highly of her, she would definitely do her best. Yulin Feng raised his right hand slightly, indicating that Bailey Hongzhuang didn't need to be so reserved. Young sect Master D, since your relationship with Bailey Hongzhuang is so good, I also hope that you can take good care of her. Come to think of it, you should know about her background. As soon as these words came out, Di Beichun's eyes suddenly changed. He looked at Yulin Feng in surprise. He did not know that Yulin Feng also knew about Hongzhuang's past. Bailey Hongzhuang was also a little surprised. She did not expect her master to suddenly mention this matter. However, on second thought, Bailey Hongzhuang understood. Her master had already known about her past when they were in the ruins. Naturally, he knew that she wanted revenge. His master had chosen to tell Di Beichun about this because he wanted to understand Beichun's feelings. Come to think of it, Master did this because he was worried about her. In fact, she had never thought that her master would take such good care of her. From the beginning when her master helped her fuse with the rainbow divine pearl to the decision to nurture her into the young palace mistress of Limitless Palace, everything happened too suddenly. Originally, she was still a little worried that her master might change his mind. Now, it seemed that all her worries were unnecessary. Her master had already thought of everything. He was willing to help her take revenge. Speaking of which, her master was also her elder. After all, they were both cultivators of the Lan family. As the inheritor of the Lan family's rainbow divine pearl, she should have an extremely high position in the Lan family. In fact, before Lan Jingquang and his family extended their evil claws to her, their family's position in the Lan family was still pretty good. It was only because of this incident that they fell to their current state. But what exactly happened to her master that made him hate the Lan family so much? She couldn't understand. Perhaps one day, she would find out the reason behind this. Chapter 1692. Don't worry, Palace Master Yu. I will take good care of Hong Zhuang. Di Beichun looked serious. He understood that Yu Linfeng was speaking as Hong Zhuang's master. Even if Yu Linfeng didn't remind him, he would take good care of Hong Zhuang, because Hong Zhuang was his life. The change in Di Beichun's expression didn't escape Yu Linfeng's eyes. After seeing Di Beichun's expression, Yu Linfeng was a little surprised. It seemed that Di Beichun didn't just like Bailey Hong Zhuang. As a man, he could tell Di Beichun's sincerity from Di Beichun's behavior. If that's the case, then there's no problem. Yu Linfeng smiled faintly and turned to Bailey Hong Zhuang. Bailey girl, I have something to discuss with young Master Di. Hearing this, Bailey Hong Zhuang was slightly stunned and couldn't help but look at Di Beichun. Di Beichun nodded slightly, indicating that there was no problem. Bailey Hong Zhuang then said, "Then I'll leave first." Yu Linfeng nodded, his gaze gentle and loving. Today, he increasingly felt that he and Bailey Hong Zhuang were fated. Perhaps it was because they were related by blood. No matter what, he would definitely help Bailey Hong Zhuang complete what she wanted to do. Creak. After the door to the meeting hall closed, Yu Linfeng then looked at Di Beichun. Young Master Di, I'm very surprised why you're with Bailey girl. Yu Linfeng's expression was indifferent, and his tone revealed a trace of carefreeness, as if he was just casually asking. Lan Yunxiao and his wife had never been able to take care of Hong Zhuang, so he was Hong Zhuang's elder. He had thought that he would never have any relatives in this lifetime. Now that he had met Hong Zhuang, it was really a kind of fate. When I was forced to leave Tiangang's sect, I met Hong Zhuang in Fengbo country. She was very special and helped me when I was at my lowest. Di Beichun spoke slowly. When his legs were crippled, he was indeed at his lowest. At that time, Hong Zhuang was the sunshine that warmed his heart. Even now, that feeling was still deeply etched in his mind. He thought that he would never forget it in this lifetime. Yu Linfeng's expression changed a little. He also knew that Di Beichun had been forced to leave. A few days ago, Gu Taihong had just given him the information from his investigation. When he found out about how Di Beichun and Bailey Hong Zhuang met, he also felt that it was fated. Otherwise, with Di Beichun's identity, it would be impossible for him to meet Bailey Hong Zhuang in this lifetime. Even if Bailey Hong Zhuang had participated in the assessment, she would have probably joined Limitless Palace. As a result, Bailey Hong Zhuang and Di Beichun would never have any interactions in this lifetime. However, it was as if the heavens had arranged it. Di Beichun had coincidentally gone to Fengbo country and married Bailey Hong Zhuang there. Logically speaking, even if Di Beichun had gone to Fengbo country, the girl he met should only be an ordinary girl. Who would have thought that Hong Zhuang had such a special background? She was also not an ordinary person. He believed that this should be the fate that the heavens had specially arranged for Di Beichun and Bailey Hong Zhuang. Your legs were cured by Bailey Hong Zhuang? According to the information that he had investigated, there was no information about how Di Beichun could stand up. Now that he heard Di Beichun's answer, he had such a guess in his heart. Chapter 1693. After getting Di Beichun's answer, Yu Linfeng was also a little surprised. Previously, when he knew that Bailey Hong Zhuang was known as the miracle doctor in Fengbo country, he didn't know that Bailey Hong Zhuang had a certain talent in medical skills. Now that he knew that Di Beichun's leg was cured by Bailey Hong Zhuang, Linfeng knew how outstanding Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills were. As the young sect leader of Tiangang's sect, Di Beichen suddenly suffered from a leg disease. Needless to say, he must have visited all the famous doctors. However, even after visiting all the famous doctors, Di Beichen's leg disease was still not cured. It was under such circumstances that Di Beichen was forced to leave Tiangang's sect. 3 years ago, Bailey Hongzhuang was only 14 or 15 years old, and she was able to make Di Beichen stand up again. Then, Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills were really too amazing. Not only that, according to the information that Gu Taihong found, the more Linfeng saw, the more surprised he was. During the inter-school competition, Bailey Hongzhuang won first place in the face competition. Although the 3 great academies weren't famous in their eyes, the alchemy competition that they held wouldn't be very powerful. However, since Bailey Hongzhuang was able to win first place in the alchemy competition, presumably her attainments in alchemy wouldn't be bad. Bailey Hongzhuang was only young, and not only was her cultivation talent outstanding, but she was also proficient in medical skills and alchemy. Adding all these aspects together, Bailey Hongzhuang was already outstanding enough. Even some of the outstanding children of the aristocratic families couldn't be compared to Bailey Hongzhuang, because alchemists and doctors were very outstanding professions. When Gu Taihong reported this information to him, he and Gu Taihong were both surprised. However, this wasn't the end. As they learned more and more information, the surprise in their hearts became more and more intense. This was because they also learned that Bailey Hongzhuang had another identity besides being a cultivator, an alchemist, and a doctor, an inscription master. An inscription master was a rarer profession than an alchemist and a doctor, and the requirements were very high. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's attainments in inscription were also very outstanding. This was also reflected in the inter-school tournament. The inscription masters of the Qing dynasty praised Bailey Hongzhuang, and even felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was the real master. Among these identities, as long as a cultivator had one of these identities, it was already a very powerful person. However, Bailey Hongzhuang actually had all 3. Not only that, but Bailey Hongzhuang's attainments in these 3 areas were also very outstanding, which was a bit shocking. Linfeng and Gu Taihong were both experienced and knowledgeable people. They had seen a lot of strange things, but it was the first time they had seen a situation like Bailey Hongzhuang. After understanding all this, Linfeng and Gu Taihong could almost conclude that there must be a secret behind Bailey Hongzhuang. Otherwise, it was impossible for a young lady of the Qing dynasty general's mansion to have the opportunity to come into contact with these. As for how Bailey Hongzhuang came into contact with these, Linfeng didn't care. He was more amazed by Bailey Hongzhuang's talent and potential in these aspects. As everyone knew, it took a lot of talent to become an alchemist. If there was no talent, there was no opportunity to enter this profession. The requirements for an inscription master were even more stringent, and it could be said that 1 in 10,000 was chosen. Chapter 1694. No one could find fault with such a Bailey Hongzhuang, because, whether it was in an aristocratic family or in a sect, such a Bailey Hongzhuang was an extremely outstanding existence. Although in many people's opinion, if a cultivator wholeheartedly walked the path of a cultivator, they would be able to go further. However, according to their current situation, this was clearly not a problem for Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang had already used her actions to prove all of this. Her cultivation was not weaker than the outstanding cultivators of her age. From Bailey Hongzhuang's actions, Linfeng could conclude that Bailey Hongzhuang's main focus was on cultivation. Revenge and saving her parents were the things that Bailey Hongzhuang wanted to do the most. Linfeng slowly collected his thoughts. This time, he only felt that choosing a disciple in the assessment competition was a very wise decision. He had found such a precious disciple, so he must nurture her well in the future. Then, you might just be grateful, Linfeng slowly said. He could imagine the usually high-spirited Di Beichen suddenly becoming a cripple. He had nowhere to vent the despair and helplessness in his heart. Until Bailey Hongzhuang healed his legs, he was able to stand up again. Naturally, he was endlessly grateful to Bailey Hongzhuang. Many people would treat this kind of gratitude as feelings, but the end result was usually very bad. Hearing Yu Linfeng's words, Di Beichen's eyes became firm and serious. I'm very clear about my feelings. I am grateful to Hong Zhuang, but more than that, it is love. I don't think I will be wrong about this. Just like when he expressed his feelings to Hong Zhuang also suspected that he was just grateful. Only he knew that his feelings for Hong Zhuang were never just gratitude. Because long before Hong Zhuang healed his legs, he must have had feelings for Hong Zhuang. Looking at Di Beichen's confident look, Yu Linfeng nodded slightly. It seemed that he didn't need to worry about this. You already know about Hong Zhuang's background, right? Yu Linfeng's gaze landed on Di Beichen. His jade-like, gentle eyes were filled with a trace of sharpness. Di Beichen nodded slightly. I know. In fact, Di Beichen was also a little surprised. He did not know how Yu Linfeng found out about this matter. At the same time, he did not understand why Yu Linfeng would choose to hand Limitless Palace over to Hong Zhuang after finding out about this matter. Logically speaking, any sect leader would look for a powerful cultivator with a good character when choosing a successor. Moreover, this cultivator would not cause any trouble. Hong Zhuang did not have any problems in other aspects, but her background was undoubtedly a huge problem. Hong Zhuang was destined to rescue her parents and take revenge. Once she became the young palace master of Limitless Palace, then Limitless Palace would be linked to her. When the Yu clan and Lan clan became enemies, Limitless Palace would naturally be involved. If it was anyone else, they would not want the sect that they had supported to be involved in this kind of matter. No matter how good Hong Zhuang's innate talent was, Yu Linfeng would not choose her. However, Yu Linfeng's reaction was unexpected. Not only did he choose Hong Zhuang, he was also unusually firm without any hesitation. This was a little too strange. Chapter 1695. Di Beichen kept pondering, but in the end, he did not voice his doubts. Then what do you plan to do? Yu Linfeng continued. The most important thing now was to rescue Bailey Hong Zhuang's parents. As for the other matters, they could take their time to think about it. The longer Lan Yunxiao and his wife stayed in the Yu clan, the greater the danger. Seeing that Yu Linfeng was so concerned about Hong Zhuang's parents, Di Beichen was even more puzzled. Why was he doing this? As if he could see Di Beichen's anger, Yu Linfeng was not surprised. Thinking about it, anyone who saw him being so concerned about Hong Zhuang's parents would also find it strange. Since Hong Zhuang is my disciple, I naturally want her to be well. If you think of a way and need my help, you can tell me. Yu Linfeng's expression was indifferent and calm. His pair of gentle eyes were filled with concern and sincerity. He and Bailey Hong Zhuang felt like old friends at first sight, so he was very satisfied with this disciple of his. Only after rescuing Bailey Hong Zhuang's parents would Hong Zhuang be able to do other things with peace of mind. Otherwise, it would not be good if there was always one thing hanging in the air. Following Yu Linfeng's Huayun, Di Beichen's deep eyes flashed with a trace of light. Yu Linfeng's heartfelt words surprised him, but he understood even more clearly that Yu Linfeng thought highly of Bailey Hong Zhuang. This was the elder's concern for the younger generation. Just like how Situ Yin had always taken care of him, Yu Linfeng also treated Bailey Hong Zhuang the same way. Thinking of this, Di Beichen immediately bowed to Yu Linfeng. Thank you, Palace Master Yu. I will think of a way to rescue Hong Zhuang's parents as soon as possible. This matter had always been on his mind. As long as this matter was not resolved, his heart would not be at ease. However, he was still waiting for news from the Shitian Pavilion. Only when he knew the exact location of Hong Zhuang's parents could he take action. At this moment, Di Beichen suddenly recalled a secret. It was said that the Limitless Palace Master had always hated the cultivators from the Lan clan. So far, the Limitless Palace had never had any contact with the Lan clan. None of the Lan clan's cultivators had ever appeared in Limitless Palace. Although there was no concrete evidence, many people had spread such rumors. Could it be that there was a grudge between Palace Master Yu and the Lan family? If that was the case, Di Beichen felt that it was understandable why Yu Linfeng would help Hong Zhuang. Seeing this, Yu Linfeng also nodded. Do you have any news now? Currently, we are still unable to determine where Hong Zhuang's parents are being held by the Yu clan. They have done this matter very secretly. I have already sent people to investigate for a long time, but they have not found anything. Yu Linfeng narrowed his eyes. The Yu clan is a big family. I think that this matter would not be known by everyone in the Yu clan. Only Yu Manlan and the other Yu clan disciples would know about it. If such an important matter was exposed, it would be a huge blow to the Yu clan. Therefore, they would definitely do it very secretly. Why don't I go and ask around? I have already asked the people from the Shurtian Pavilion to help me ask around. I believe that there will be results after a while. Deep Beichun said slowly. It was not that he had no way to find out this information, but he was afraid that the situation might change if he made a big move. Chapter 1696. Did Shurtian Tower accept this mission? Yu Linfeng asked. They will accept it. Di Beichun's tone was firm. If he was still worried about whether Shurtian Tower would accept this mission, after knowing that Mo Yunjue was the young master of Shurtian Tower, he was already certain of the answer. He and Mo Yunjue had only met twice, but just from the process of his dealings with Mo Yunjue, he could already conclude that Mo Yunjue was a very powerful person. They were rivals in love, but they both hoped that Hong Zhuang could live well. Therefore, Mo Yunjue would definitely help. As long as Mo Yunjue inquired about the location of Hong Zhuang's parents, he would immediately send people to act. He would definitely rescue Hong Zhuang's parents as soon as possible. After seeing Di Beichun so certain, Yu Linfeng's eyebrows were tinged with a trace of surprise, but it disappeared in the blink of an eye. Generally speaking, Shurtian Tower would not accept a mission that involved a lot of things, unless the other party gave them conditions that they could not refuse. Otherwise, they would not be willing to do something that might offend the Yu clan. As a medical family, the Yu clan was really a family full of disciples. In the entire Shangxian continent, there were many cultivators who had received their kindness. However, the Yu clan was not a medical family. They only treated people for benefits. As long as they could not pay enough benefits, even if a cultivator died in front of their door, they would not blink. Since Shurtian Tower will accept this mission, I believe that they will definitely find out the specific location. Yu Linfeng's eyes flashed with wisdom. He was also very impressed with Shurtian Tower's information network. There is almost no news in the entire Shangxian continent that they could not find out. As long as they determine the location, they could take action. Deep Beichun nodded slightly. I will do it as soon as possible. If you need my help, just tell me. Bailey Girl is my disciple. Although we have not been master and disciple for long, she is a junior that I think highly of. Since you're together with Bailey Girl, you have to treat her well, Yu Linfeng said earnestly. Bailey Hongzhuang's background was too pitiful. He only hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang would be happy in the future. Feeling the connection and lamentation in Yu Linfeng's words, Di Beichun's heart was also touched. No matter who it was, they would feel pity for Hong Zhuang after learning about her past. Hong Zhuang was such a good girl, yet such a thing happened to Hong Zhuang. He could only hope that everything would get better in the future. Palace Master Yu, don't worry. I will definitely treat Hong Zhuang well. Di Beichun's handsome face flashed with a serious light, and his words were like an oath. After talking with Yu Linfeng for a while, Di Beichun walked out of the assembly hall. Outside the assembly hall, Bailey Hongzhuang, He Mu, and the three beasties were waiting outside. Gu Taihong was also looking at them with a kind smile. They did not know what Yu Linfeng was talking about with Di Beichun in the assembly hall, so they could only wait here. He Mu did not know what the young master and young madam were doing here. He was completely confused. After the three beasties arrived at Limitless Palace, they became well-behaved. Playing around on normal days was nothing. Now that they came out with their master, their actions represented their master. Naturally, they could not lose face for their master. Chapter 1697. Gu Taihong's gaze landed on Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Bai Shi. These three contracted beasts were very special. Until now, he had never seen such contracted beasts before. Aside from the different colors, the two black and white furballs were exactly the same, as if they were twin beasts. Moreover, that pair of eyes were full of liveliness and liveliness. Compared to the other contracted beasts he usually saw, it was undoubtedly much livelier. It was as if its intelligence was higher as well. The other white contracted beast looked very cute. Its round body was lazy and cozy, but its pair of lively big eyes revealed a bit of sharpness. These three little fellows looked like they had no battle strength, but he noticed that the strength of these three contracted beasts was not simple. With Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's status, their contracted beasts were naturally not simple beasts. Gu Taihong's gaze wandered between the three contracted beasts for a moment. Then his gaze landed on Xiao He and Xiao Bai. Since Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were a pair of lovers, then it was very likely that their contracted beasts were similar. This black and white furball was obviously very suitable for Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. Hearing Gu Taihong's words, Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment, then smiled and said, "They are all my contracted beasts." Master had already prepared to nurture her as the successor of Limitless Palace. As Master's most trusted elder, she could naturally trust Elder Gu. Even if she didn't say it now, Gu Taihong would find out sooner or later, so there was no need to hide it. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Gu Taihong couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. His eyes suddenly widened, and he suspected that he had heard wrongly. "These three beasts are all yours?" Even though Gu Taihong was sure that he didn't hear wrongly, he still couldn't believe this answer. Everyone could only have one contracted beast. How could Bailey Hongzhuang have three contracted beasts? This was simply too inconceivable. When He Mu saw Gu Taihong's incredulous expression, a faint smile appeared on his face. When he first found out that young madam had contracted three demon beasts, his expression wasn't much better than Gu Taihong's. Young master had always been outstanding since he was young, but every time young madam did something, it would always give people an indescribable feeling of shock. In the eyes of ordinary people, some things that were impossible to happen often happened to young madam. Now that he had seen so many things, he was already puzzled. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded. "That's right." Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang affirm the answer, Gu Taihong couldn't help but ask, "How did you do it?" Every cultivator could only form a contract with one demonic beast. This was a law that had been passed down in the Shengxian continent for many years. It wasn't that no one had tried to contract two demonic beasts. After all, contracting one more demonic beast would increase the strength of the cultivator. However, none of the cultivators who tried this had a good ending. After witnessing such a situation, no cultivator in the Shengxian continent dared to attempt such a thing. However, he actually saw a successful case. This was simply too unbelievable. Chapter 1698. The reason why Bailey Hongzhuang was able to contract three monsters was because of the existence of the Chaos Ring. If it weren't for the Chaos Ring, she would naturally only be able to form a contract with one demonic beast. However, she could not say this reason. After thinking about it, Bailey Hongzhuang could only make up a reason and attribute everything to her own uniqueness. After all, she had no way to make other cultivators do this. I don't know what's going on at this point. Maybe it's because of my special characteristics. At the beginning, I accidentally contracted the second monster, and later found that there was no effect, so I contracted the third monster. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was a bit confused. She then asked, "Elder Gu, do you know the reason?" After hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's answer, Gu Taihong was a little puzzled, but soon felt that Bailey Hongzhuang's answer was true, because he had never heard of a cultivator in the Shengxian continent who had successfully contracted multiple monsters. Bailey Hongzhuang's ignorant and blank expression did not seem to be faked. If this kind of thing happened to him, he would not know the reason. There were many things in this world that people could not explain. Perhaps, among the thousands of cultivators, there was a special case like Bailey Hongzhuang. This was not impossible. In the history of the Shengxian continent, there were many talented cultivators who could often do things that other cultivators could not do. However, when this kind of thing happened to Bailey Hongzhuang, Gu Taihong's mood was still a bit complicated. In the process of investigating Bailey Hongzhuang's past, Gu Taihong was refreshed by Bailey Hongzhuang again and again. Doctor, alchemist, inscription master, cultivator, Bailey Hongzhuang had four identities, and her development in these four aspects was extremely outstanding. Dr. Bailey Hongzhuang was a very famous doctor in the Fengbo country. Alchemist, Bailey Hongzhuang won the first place in the 3 Academy tournament. Inscription Master, Bailey Hongzhuang was highly sought after by the Qing dynasty's inscription masters. Cultivator, Bailey Hongzhuang won the first place in the assessment tournament. If it was any other young person, as long as they had one of these 4 identities, it would be an extremely happy thing. However, Bailey Hongzhuang directly took all these professions, and her achievements in each profession were excellent. As an elder of Wuji Palace, he had seen many young cultivators, but he really did not understand how Bailey Hongzhuang had so much energy to accomplish all this. Now, Bailey Hongzhuang had successfully contracted 3 more demonic beasts. This was truly infuriating. Bailey Hongzhuang's attainments were a bit too amazing. However, Gu Taihong was very sympathetic to Bailey Hongzhuang's tragic life. Any achievements were not obtained for free, but relied on the continuous efforts of the cultivator to succeed. Thinking about it, it was because of her miserable life that Bailey Hongzhuang worked so hard. All these efforts would be rewarded. He believed that Bailey Hongzhuang would succeed in her revenge and rescue her parents. I've never heard of a cultivator being able to contract with 3 demonic beasts. Miss Bailey has really opened my eyes. Gu Taiyong laughed. Chapter 1699. Following the conversation between Bailey Hongzhuang and Gu Taiyong, not long after, Di Beichun walked out of the conference hall. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, Di Beichun's face revealed a smile. Beichun, Bailey Hongzhuang called out softly and walked to the front of Di Beichun. Di Beichun smiled and said, "Palace Master you called you in. He has something to tell you." Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. She did not expect that her master would call them in separately. "Then I'll go in." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and signaled to Gu Taiyong before walking into the conference hall. When He Mu saw the young master and young madam walking into the conference hall, he was even more confused. What was the palace master of Limitless Palace trying to do? Conference hall. Master. Bailey Hongzhuang bowed respectfully to Yulin Feng. "There's no one else here. You don't have to be so polite." Yulin Feng waved his hand and smiled. Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. "Thank you, Master. There's nothing important to call you here. I just want to tell you about the next arrangement. Master, please tell me. Have a good rest and relax in these 3 months. After 3 months, cultivate in Tiangang's sect for 3 months. Lastly, come to Limitless Palace to cultivate with me for 3 months. I've already told young sect Master D about this. He will arrange it for you. Before you learn everything that I have taught you, I will not reveal your identity as the young palace master of Limitless Palace. You have to be careful too." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded seriously. "Thank you, Master. I understand." With her current strength, she was indeed not qualified to assume the identity of Limitless Palace's young palace master. If she were to publicize this point now, not only would it not bring her any benefits, it might even cause others to question her master's judgment. The title of first place in the assessment was indeed not bad. However, compared to the title of Limitless Palace's young palace master, there was still a huge gap. "That's good. I believe it'll be fine." Yu Linfeng's eyes were filled with admiration. He admired Bailey Hongzhuang's strength and humility. However, any cultivator who could walk far on the path of cultivation all had the quality of humility. If they became arrogant because of a little achievement, they were destined to not have great achievements on this path. Bailey Hongzhuang deeply bowed to Yu Linfeng, her beautiful face full of sincerity and gratitude. "Thank you for taking care of me, Master. I won't let you down." Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was filled with gratitude. From the beginning to the end, her master had trusted her and helped her. She was extremely grateful. In this world, there weren't many people who treated her well. However, for those who treated her well, she would do her best to treat them better. She had no way to repay her master's kindness. She could only make herself stronger and more outstanding. Only by doing so, she wouldn't let down her master's expectations. Looking at the expression in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes, Yu Linfeng's lips curled up. If you need my help, just tell me directly. I will do my best to help you. Yu Lin Feng continued. Since you're my disciple, you're not an outsider in the future. Chapter 1700. Not an outsider. A woman in a bright red dress walked in briskly. Her bright and moving face was full of brashness and fierceness. Her delicate and flawless facial features were beautiful and moving, revealing a bold and unrestrained air. However, her face was full of anger at this moment. Yu Lin Feng, who are you and not an outsider? The woman glared angrily at Yu Lin Feng, her eyes burning with two clusters of flames. It was as if she would kill Yu Lin Feng if Yu Lin Feng didn't answer her question clearly. When Yu Lin Feng saw the woman appear, his expression immediately changed. He said, "Wu that's not what I meant. If that's not what you meant, then what do you mean?" Nangong Wu immediately drew her sharp sword and glared at Yu Lin Feng fiercely. Clearly, if Yu Lin Feng's answer didn't suit her, she would definitely attack immediately. "Wu please don't misunderstand," Yu Lin Feng hurriedly said, his expression filled with nervousness and awkwardness. However, Nangong Wu's emotions didn't calm down so easily. She only glared at Yu Lin Feng and said, "Tell me, who is this woman?" Bailey Hongzhuang stared blankly at Nangong Wu, who had suddenly appeared. Although Nangong Wu's murderous aura was very strong, judging from the way Nangong Wu and her master were conversing, it was clearly more like flirting. "Wu Bailey girl is my disciple. Didn't I mention it to you before?" Yu Lin Feng smiled faintly at Nangong Wu, hoping to calm Nangong Wu down. Sure enough, after knowing Bailey Hongzhuang's identity, Nangong Wu was slightly stunned. She immediately put away her weapon and revealed a look of understanding. "So she's your disciple." Yu Lin Feng had mentioned this to her before, but she didn't pay much attention to it. In her eyes, as long as it was something Yu Lin Feng did, there wouldn't be any problems. It was just that she didn't know that Yu Lin Feng's disciple was a woman, which led to such a misunderstanding. Seeing the change in Nangong Wu, Yu Lin Feng also let out a sigh of relief. He knew that once Nangong Wu lost her temper, the power would be really shocking. Nangong Wu then carefully looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. When she saw Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful face, Nangong Wu's expression changed again. "Yu Lin Feng, have you had a change of heart?" Nangong Wu pursed her lips. She no longer had the arrogance from before. Instead, she looked pitiful. "Wu why do you say that?" Yu Lin Feng obviously couldn't keep up with Nangong Wu's thoughts. He had just cleared up the misunderstanding. Why did Nangong Wu suddenly change again? "Yu Lin Feng, if you want to find a disciple, then just find a disciple. Why did you bring such a beautiful girl back? Do you have other thoughts?" Nangong Wu's eyes quickly filled with a layer of mist. She looked like she was about to cry, which made her look very pitiful. "Wu it's not what you think." Yu Lin Feng quickly stepped forward and walked to Nangong Wu's side. "I don't have such thoughts. What's more, you know my arrangements in the ruins. Whoever passes will be my disciple. I can't determine who will pass. Appearance is one thing. It's just a coincidence." Bailey Hongzhuang stood in place and stared blankly at this scene. She already understood that this woman in red was her master's wife. However, she didn't expect her master to have such a side. It was really surprising. Chapter 1701. When she heard Yu Lin Feng's words, the sobbing Nangong Wu froze for a moment. She thought carefully in her mind and realized that Yu Lin Feng was right. No one would know who the cultivator who had received their inheritance was until the very last moment. As for the appearance, it was even more impossible to predict. However, from a woman's point of view, Bailey Hongzhuang was too threatening. She had always had high standards, but after meeting Bailey Hongzhuang, she felt that she was invulnerable, let alone a man. Then how dangerous would it be for me to find such a disciple? Nangong Wu looked at Yu Lin Feng in dissatisfaction. She had thought that she was beautiful enough, but she never thought that she would have such a beautiful disciple. As a woman, she was a great threat. Seeing that Nangong Wu was getting off topic, Yu Lin Feng felt even more helpless. He pulled Nangong Wu to sit next to him. "Wu don't think too much. In fact, I should be Bailey's elder, an elder who is related to her by blood." Yu Linfeng's voice was gentle as he looked at Nangong Wu with eyes full of love and affection. He patiently explained to Nangong Wu. Bailey Hongzhuang stood on the spot and watched the scene. She felt that she should leave first under such circumstances. However, it would not be right for her to leave in such an awkward situation. Therefore, Bailey Hongzhuang could only stand awkwardly on the spot. She thought that her master would be able to solve this problem very quickly. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did not expect her master, who had always been calm and collected, to be at a loss after seeing his wife. How interesting. If she had not seen this scene with her own eyes, she would never have imagined it. However, she was happy to see how close her master and his wife were. Although she did not know what her master had encountered in the Lan family in the past, she thought that it would not have been any better. Moreover, in order to not have any connection with the Lan family, Master even took out the Rainbow Divine Pearl. His master had endured so many things in the past, and now that he was able to find his own happiness, it was undoubtedly the happiest thing for him. After hearing Yu Linfeng's words, Nangong Wu also calmed down. She looked at Yu Linfeng in surprise, her expression full of confusion. Blood relationship? Nangong Wu's eyes wandered between Yu Linfeng and Bailey Hongzhuang. She could not believe what she had heard. You mean this girl is also from the Lan family? After understanding this point, Nangong Wu couldn't believe it. She knew very well just how much Yu Linfeng hated the Lan family. Normally, Yu Linfeng's face would darken whenever the Lan family was mentioned. Even when Limitless Palace was recruiting disciples, they would never recruit any cultivators who were related to the Lan family. From this, she could tell that Yu Linfeng hated the Lan family. However, Yu Linfeng actually found a cultivator from the Lan family to be his disciple. Wasn't this equivalent to giving Limitless Palace to the Lan family? How could Yu Linfeng make such a decision? Nangong Wu was completely stunned at this moment, but her clear and bright eyes were filled with a hint of seriousness. She wanted to know the answer. Yu Linfeng must have his reasons for doing this. Chapter 1702. After hearing Yu Linfeng's words, Nangong Wu also understood a bit. She looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a bit of shock. She didn't think that when Yu Linfeng was recruiting disciples, there would be such a thing. Didn't this mean that Bailey Hongzhuang also suffered unfair treatment in the Lan family? Yu Linfeng looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and said, Bailey Hongzhuang, do you mind? Hearing Yu Linfeng's words, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood what Yu Linfeng was asking her. I don't mind. Since Nangong Wu was her master's wife, she would know about these things sooner or later. She didn't want her matter to become a grudge between her master and master's wife. She believed that after master's wife knew the reason, she wouldn't mind. Yu Linfeng nodded slightly. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang, the affection in his eyes became stronger. Not only was this disciple of his amazing talent, but her character was also very good. Perhaps it was because of all these reasons, he was even more determined to hand over Limitless Palace to Bailey Hongzhuang. The matter is like this. Yu Linfeng slowly told Nangong Wu about Bailey Hongzhuang's life. He was very clear that Nangong Wu had a childish temper. As long as Nangong Wu knew about Bailey Hongzhuang's life, he was afraid that Nangong Wu would treat Bailey Hongzhuang better. This woman, when she was angry, she was scarier than anyone else. However, her softness was equally shocking. With Yu Linfeng's explanation, Nangong Wu gradually understood. She never thought that Yu Linfeng and Bailey Hongzhuang had such a relationship. Bailey Hongzhuang's life was actually so pitiful. Nangong Wu couldn't help but feel heartache. Lan Jingquang's family is simply inhumane. After knowing everything, Nangong Wu immediately stood up. Her eyes were burning with anger again. The Lan family is really bad. After such a thing happened, they still stood on Lan Jingquang's side. It's really disappointing. Nangong Wu's face was filled with indignation. She couldn't believe that such a thing actually happened. The Rainbow Pearl was forcefully taken away. Her parents were still imprisoned in the Yu clan. Bailey Hongzhuang completely didn't know about her life. She couldn't imagine how did Bailey Hongzhuang endure all this when she found out about her life's life. It came to think about it, this kind was a huge blow to anyone's life. Bailey Hongzhuang had started off as a cultivator of a small dynasty, and it really wasn't easy for her to reach her current position. At this moment, Nangong Wu didn't have any jealousy from before. Now, she only felt even more disgusted with the Lan family. Previously, they had done such a terrible thing to Lin Feng. She never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would do something even worse. It's not just the Lan family. That Yu clan is also despicable. Chapter 1703. Seeing Nangong Wu's murderous look, Bailey Hongzhuang was also dumbfounded. This mistress of his was really in a rush, just like how she was when she first walked in. Yu Linfeng quickly pulled Nangong Wu back and said, "Wu, things are not so simple now. Bailey's parents are still locked up in the Yu clan. If we act rashly now, once we are discovered, Bailey's parents will be in danger." After Yu Linfeng's reminder, Nangong Wu finally reacted and said, "Yes, I almost forgot about this most important thing. Then let's go save Hong Zhuang's parents first. After we save them, we will kill the Lan clan." The next moment, Nangong Wu walked in front of Bailey Hongzhuang again and said, "Hongzhuang, everything will be fine. If you have any problems, look for me. As long as I can do it, I will definitely help you. When you kill the Lan clan, you must call me. I have been accumulating my resentment towards the Lan clan for a long time." After knowing all this, Nangong Wu no longer had any thoughts of jealousy. She only sympathized with Bailey Hongzhuang and hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang could rescue her parents as soon as possible. Moreover, Bailey Hongzhuang was Yu Linfeng's junior, so there was no need to worry about this. Yu Linfeng's smile revealed a bit of helplessness. Nangong Wu had always been like this. He was also very helpless. However, it was precisely because of Nangong Wu's character that he liked her even more. "Thank you, Master's wife." Bailey Hongzhuang's face was filled with a joyful smile. Although today was the first time she met Master's wife and almost caused a jealous misunderstanding, she felt that with Nangong Wu's character, she should be easy to get along with. She believed in Master's eyesight. "Don't be so polite. We will be a family in the future." Nangong Wu patted Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder and smiled warmly. Listening to Nangong Wu's words, Yu Linfeng was even more helpless. "Someone just said that he was wrong. From the first time I saw you, I felt a sense of affinity. You are Linfeng's disciple, so you are my disciple. I will teach you everything I know." Nangong Wu was extremely excited. Yu Linfeng and her were the only two people in Limitless Palace. Although there were many disciples in the sect, they were not very close. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang was here, they would definitely have a lot of things to talk about. When she thought of this, Nangong Wu couldn't help but become excited. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded. "Thank you, Master's wife." Yu Linfeng chuckled. "Bailey lass, don't be fooled by Master's wife's impetuous personality. Her strength is still very strong. You will see it in the future. Moreover, she likes to create some strange things. I feel that the two of you should hit it off very well." Thinking about Bailey Hongzhuang's identity as a doctor, an alchemist, and an inscription master, Yu Linfeng could conclude that Bailey Hongzhuang must also like to research some strange things. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. She always liked to fiddle with some special things. During the process of creation, she always felt that it was full of fun. "Really? Hongzhuang, you also like these?" Nangong Wu said excitedly. Her pair of bright eyes looked at Hongzhuang as if she saw the most intimate person. Chapter 1704. I like to make weapons, explosives, and the like. Nangong Wu's face was filled with an excited smile. She liked to deal with these things the most, but Yu Linfeng was not interested in these things. Therefore, she usually studied these things by herself. The Dark Phoenix's eyes were filled with deep surprise. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Nangong Wu in surprise. It was really hard to imagine that Master's wife would like to study these things. "I haven't come into contact with these," Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. So far, she had come into contact with things like medical skills and inscription techniques. She really had not come into contact with weapons and explosives. Hearing this, Nangong Wu was a little disappointed. She just wanted to find someone who was interested in these things like herself. It seemed that it was really too difficult. However, I am very interested. The delicate and dazzling face was filled with a gentle smile. Although she had never come into contact with these things, she was also very interested in these things, especially explosives. With Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, Nangong Wu's face quickly filled with a touch of joy. Really? Nangong Wu asked uncertainly. She had liked these things for a long time, but the people she had come into contact with were not interested in these things. After all, most cultivators put their energy into cultivation. There were not many cultivators like her who did not do proper work. If there was a person who did not do proper work, it would be Bailey Hongzhuang who did not do proper work. She was obviously a cultivator, but she had dabbled in medical skills, alchemy, and inscription techniques. However, Bailey Hongzhuang felt that there was nothing wrong with this. Really? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded seriously. She was full of interest in many things that she did not understand. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang did not seem to be lying, Nangong Wu's eyes became more and more excited. That's really great. I will have a companion in the future. Nangong Wu was excited. When the time comes, we'll make a powerful explosive and throw it into the Lan family. The effect will be great. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. She had to admit that what Ma M said was a very good suggestion. When he would take revenge, he would throw a few explosives. The effect would definitely be great. When Yu Linfeng saw the excited Nangong Wu and Bailey Hongzhuang in front of him, the smile in his eyes deepened. It seemed that he had made the right choice in accepting this disciple. After a burst of joy, Nangong Wu remembered something and said, "When I came in just now, I seem to have seen the young master of Tiangang's sect, Di Beichen. Why is he here?" The dignified young sect master suddenly paid a visit to Limitless Palace. This should be a very big matter. But until now, why didn't she receive any news about it? Yu Linfeng smiled. Young sect master Di and Bailey Lass are a couple. Young sect master Di specially came to accompany Bailey Lass. After the conversation with Di Beichen previously, his impression of Di Beichen was very good. He believed in his judgment. If there were no accidents, Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang would walk to the end. Hearing Yu Linfeng's words, Nangong Wu was slightly stunned. Her gaze then fell onto Bailey Hongzhuang. Really? She heard from Linfeng that Bailey Hongzhuang came from a small empire. Since she was from a small empire, how did she know the young master of Tiangang sect? Bailey Hongzhuang smiled, tacitly agreeing with Nangong Wu's question.